Greetings, everyone, and welcome to GameFace, episode 386 on Sifted Games at Sifted.net. I'm Shane Satterfield, the founder of Sifted, and the co-host of this awesome podcast about video games. Alongside me to handle that awesome podcast is Matthew Kyle. Matt, you finally feeling back to 100 yet?
Sort of.
Yeah?
I don't feel like I have bronchitis anymore, but now the weather's nice, so the allergies are coming.
Yeah.
So...
It is a beautiful day here in LA, and I just got to say, we've had this gray, rainy, whatever for months. It felt really good to drive over here today with the windows down and the sun and the air blowing in, cranking the music. I was like, okay.
Wait for it. June's coming.
Yeah, I know. June gloom, right?
Yeah.
We're going to get 2 weeks of awesome weather.
There's no E3 this year, so maybe that won't happen. Because
that's a good point.
Traditionally, that was when it happened, was everybody flew in for E3 and everything got real gray.
That's true, actually, yeah. Well, actually, it turns out there kind of is an E3 this year.
Yeah, nobody's coming in.
No one's coming in for it, yeah, but it's still kind of happening, which is cool. How are you guys doing? Hope you guys have had a great week. It's been a little slow on the video game front until like the last 2 days, where we just got this deluge of news and other stuff that's been going on. But the games themselves have been a little slow. However, we do have 4 reviews in today's episode of GameFace. Come hell or high water. Now, Hades 2 is not one of them. Just got the code for that this morning from Supergiant. And in fact, Matt, they sent you one too. So we'll be tackling that in next week's episode, but we still have 4 reviews in today's show. And in fact, one of them may be in the discussion for Game of the Year around the end of the year in certain circles. So we'll see how that goes. But
I will admit, though, in the end, I was very happy I didn't touch Hades 1 until 1.0.
Yeah, you didn't go through the whole early access stuff. No. Now, we'll talk about it in a minute, but yeah, I think the whole early access thing is one of those things where it's like some people are going to love it, being a part of that whole process. Other people are going to be like you, are going to be like, I just want to play the game when it's done.
And sometimes it's, I probably would buy Hades 2 early access just to support them, but I don't think I'd play it until it was done.
Yeah.
You know?
Mm-hmm. Yep, so we'll be talking about Hades 2 because it was shadow dropped out of freaking nowhere into early access. We kind of saw it coming because they did like a technical test.
Yeah, we knew it was happening at some point, but not like that
necessarily.
Yeah.
So I played a lot of games this week. I finished one of them, actually. I didn't get to finish most of them because there were just so many. And we mentioned in last week's episode that May starts a little slow, and then it picks up at the end, and that is definitely the case. But I think we have a great show for you guys this week, and we'll probably have another great show for you guys next week as well. In fact, let's check in on you party people and see what you guys are up to and what you're saying. Vincent says it's weird. Apparently Hades 2 already has more content than the first game. David Nordic, thank you for Twitch Prime. In fact, if you guys want to deliver Twitch Prime right now, that's the perfect time so I can thank you in the actual show. So David Nordic, thank you. Mega Drive Guy, thank you. One Super Master Gamer, thank you. See if we got any others in here. Henry Pumpkins, thank you. That's a good username. Swad42, thank you. So we got a few in here. Let's see if we got any more that I mentioned it. Nope, looks like that's it. Vincent says if you're looking for games, you will find them. Yeah, there's lots of games coming out. They're just smaller, like indie games that are coming out in the earlier part of the month. Justin Horman, thank you for subscribing at Tier 3 for 83 months. An 83-month streak. That is incredible, Justin. Thank you. As always, one of our biggest supporters of GameFace here on Twitch and otherwise. Don Lionheart, thank you for Twitch Prime. Get him in, people, before I have to switch away from the chat. If you got your Twitch Prime subscription, wait and do it right now so I can thank you guys. I love being able to thank you guys basically in person for this stuff. And by the way, if you don't know what all these people are doing, Twitch Prime is a way that you can give us a free $2.50 every month if you are an Amazon Prime member. It's very simple. You do have to connect your Amazon Prime account with your Twitch account. It takes like 2 minutes. And if you're watching this show on YouTube, the instructions for doing that are down below. Once you've connected those accounts, it literally takes 3 seconds every month to re-up with Twitch Prime. You just have to go to our page, twitch.tv/siftedgames, and click the little drop down. And at the very bottom there, there's a thing that you click, and then you just click submit, and you give us a free $2.50. You don't have to do anything to help us out. That's great. Also, if you're listening to the show on any of the podcast services, review the show, please. Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, wherever you're listening, we're on all of them. Review the show. If you can't afford to help us out, that is a way that you can help us with no money at all. Mitchell Ness asks, are you guys planning on attending the Xbox Game Showcase? No. In person, no, because we'll be doing coverage. And coverage stuff is still a little hazy. We'll be talking about that probably next week. But as usual, like, we don't go to that stuff in person because we need to actually cover it. And that's the thing. That's the irony of this industry, is if you attend stuff in person, you can't actually do the coverage that people expect of the events anymore. It used to be you had to go so that we could live stream the press conferences, and then we'd have our talent do their little stand-ups and their hits after the press conference, and it used to be essential that you would be at these things. That's really not the case anymore.
No.
Which is probably for the better, Matt, I think. Like,
I don't miss it.
Yeah. I mean, I will say this. So, No Clip. You guys are familiar with No Clip. One of the old guys from GameSpot started his own like game documentary YouTube channel or whatever, and they do great work there. And I admire what they do. Well, they saved a bunch of videotapes that GameSpot was going to throw away, and as it turns out, they had like all these retro press conferences in
I told you about that like a year or two ago.
In like crystal clear. Well,
We've been putting them up periodically since.
He just did a big dump. That's why I'm bringing it up. So he started digging back into the tapes, and he started putting up more footage from those archives. And it's like this razor sharp, like 1080p, like press. And we've been watching this stuff in like 360p.
Yeah, well, a lot of it's been like upscaled and stuff, and it looks really good.
It's incredible how good it looks. So anyway, I was looking back through some of that stuff, and I went and watched the old disaster E3 press conference, and I saw myself in the crowd.
Yeah,
like
I'm in there. I'm like center row center the sixth row back.
Yeah, we all are. It's like Kevin, Pereira, Adam, and then me, and then I think Morgan, and maybe you next to Morgan.
I was next to Morgan.
Yeah,
'cause I remember. I think it was between Morgan and Adam, because I remember during the Eye of Judgment section, Morgan just turns to me and goes, "What the fuck am I watching?"
But seeing those clips, it just brought back a lot of memories and nostalgia. And it was exciting walking into those, not knowing what you're going to see. It felt like back then we didn't know as much before they happened either.
Well, also because a lot of times it was like we'd been flying to get there when we were in San Francisco, or like down here you'd been doing all this pre-production stuff.
Yeah.
You barely had time to even find out. Nothing leaked so much. I remember one time, what was it, the year Microsoft showed Final Fantasy X, we were setting up. We were setting the cameras up in the building, and they were rehearsing and da-da-da. And while I was in there with one of the camera tests, they ran like a little bit of the Final Fantasy X trailer. And I was like, what? And I came back out and I said like, I think I just saw Final Fantasy X in there. And Adam's like, that's not
here. That's not going to happen.
Like, nah, I'm pretty sure that's what that was. And like, was it 13? It was 13.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
And I was like, I think this is what that was. And I was like, no, that was impossible.
And
there it was. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, GameSpot was just going to throw all that stuff out, and then he rescued it. Like, it's insane that they're going to throw away the history of the industry.
I mean, that happened. Like Masters and like old B-roll, like that's just to them. It's just like old news they can't use anymore because all the fair use is gone from that stuff.
It's like, I don't know what happened to all the tapes we had at Game Trailers. We had all that stuff too, and like my guess is, when Defy bought Game Trailers from MTV Viacom, they just threw it all out. That'd be my guess.
I'm pretty sure. I mean, most of it was probably reused. I'm pretty sure the vast majority of GeForce shows don't exist anymore. That they either dumped all the masters in deep storage somewhere, or more likely they erased the discs and tapes and reused them for other stuff.
It's like they don't even use tapes anymore.
No, well, most of the stuff we had was on like those huge discs.
Yeah, they're almost like blades for servers. Yeah.
I mean, I have like a little over 100 X-Play episodes that I had them burned to DVD for me before they fired us all, which were all like very hand-picked as like the best stuff we did. Of things I
curated, basically.
They're like my favorite ones. Or the stuff I did that other people did that I thought was the best stuff. And like that may be the only... Spooey, the old fan on the new Spooey channel on YouTube, he puts a bunch of stuff. He has a very extensive catalog.
He is a G4 god. If you ever want to watch old G4 stuff, go to Spooey's YouTube channel.
So as far as I know, the only remaining X-Play episodes are the ones I have and the ones he has. I don't know how much overlap there is. He probably has most of the ones I have.
Yeah.
But like, I'm almost certain, and some of the people who nobody who works there anymore, at E or any of those places, like I don't know anybody there anymore. Like, the last few people that were remaining left like probably 5 years ago, 4 years ago.
Tapes are gone.
And all those tapes must be long gone.
It's important to save history.
Like the vast majority
really
of Attack of the Show doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure of that.
Yeah. Because you think, it's very easy now to think about things of like, oh, the next 20 years. Well, in 20 years, it'll be gone. Think about 1,000 years from now. Mm-hmm. Like the other night I was talking to my wife and she's like, oh, the Steelers have been stuck on 6 Super Bowls for, 10 years now or whatever. And I was like, think about 1,000 years from now. Every NFL team is going to have 25 Super Bowl championships. It's crazy to think about. Nobody thinks about the future in realistic ways. They're always like, oh, let's talk about flying cars. It's like, no, let's think about things practically. It's mind-blowing to think about. Right now, it's the Steelers have 6, and the Patriots have 6, and these other teams are about to get 6 or whatever. It's none of that is going to matter in the distant future. It's really crazy to think about. But anyway, that's why it's important to preserve history, because you get 5 or 10 years afterward, no one cares anymore. But then you think way down the road, when they talk about the beginning of video game television or video game video production or video game content, what's going to be left for them to talk about? It'll be interesting.
How lucky are we that someone actually had a camera rolling and kept the tape of the Sega Sony E3 announcement?
Right. Even though it's the size of a postage stamp, you have to squint to see it.
It's 240i or something.
Yeah.
But you get to see that Sony guy come up and go,
moment.
$299. Boom.
Turn around, yeah.
And the industry was different forever.
Yeah. Otherwise, it just turns into this story that eventually people are like, did it really happen? So anyway, thank God for NoClip for doing that, because they have preserved the highest quality of the history of the industry. So thank you very much for doing the...
Just having all those press conferences is important.
Yeah, hell yeah. So anyway, hope you guys are doing great. Let's do one last check-in with you guys before we get into our housekeeping. We have a lot of housekeeping and a big show today. We'll see if we can get through it all. Fire Native says in 20 years the NFL won't be here. Okay. Yeah, just like whenever he was kneeling, they're like, oh, the league's going to end, and it's bigger than ever. Mm-hmm. Good one, buddy. You may wish because you don't like football, but it is going to be here a long, long time.
I've been hearing the death knell of the NFL since I was probably in high school, and it just doesn't seem to happen.
Okay, they're complaining about your mic again. So you guys probably didn't notice this, but you complained about Matt's mic last week and the week before, and so I have switched the orientation of Matt's mic. I just want you guys to know we're working on this. When you guys say things bother you, we try to fix it, and we're trying to fix it now. That's the advantage of wearing headphones when you record podcasts, because you can hear if you're not loud and you'll lean in. And you can also hear if you're really loud and you'll pull back.
I think part of the problem is that we're closer now, so that if you turn this mic up too much, it starts picking you up because you're a lot louder than
maybe. Might be. But here's the other thing too, is you start low at the beginning of the show, and as the show goes on, you get louder. I don't know why it is, but almost every episode, the first
warm up.
Yeah, I guess you do. You just got to get the engine revving. Anyway, we're working on it. I will bump up his level again here a little bit.
Slow burn. I'm Irish. You got to get a couple drinks in there.
And maybe that's what we should be doing. We should be drinking LS Cream during the show. Then we'll be plenty loud enough. Okay, so I just adjusted his mic. Hopefully that helps a little bit. Don Lionheart, thank you, man, for the bits. That's awesome. And Don Lionheart says you can now sub with Twitch Prime on the iOS app.
Yeah? He said Android, I thought.
Oh, really? He didn't say, actually. Oh, you've always been able to do on an Android, Don Lionheart.
Yeah, if you look at when he subscribes, he says on the Android.
Oh, you've always been able to do it on an Android.
You can't do it on iOS because then Apple would get a cut of what you did.
Yeah,
and that's the only reason that's not available on there.
Yeah. The one thing I would say, too, is, look, we appreciate how you guys support us in any way, shape, or form, but, a lot of people are paying for subscriptions on Twitch instead of going to our Patreon. And again, we appreciate every penny that you guys help us with. I'm not saying that we don't appreciate it. However, we lose half of that. So if you subscribe here on Twitch instead of going to Patreon, we lose half of that money. Twitch and Amazon takes half of that $4 or whatever it is to subscribe per month. If you go to Patreon, we lose 80 cents or $1 out of that $4. So we actually get way more money if you go to our Patreon at patreon.com/sifted instead of subscribing on Twitch. And look, I understand some of you guys are in the Twitch ecosystem. You don't want to go log in somewhere else and get your credit card out somewhere else. I totally understand that. I'm just letting you know that the best way to support us is through Patreon, because we get more of the money that you guys are trying to give us. So just to let you know. And with that, we need to get going. It's time to get going with housekeeping. again, it was a really slow week until the last 2 days. In the last 2 days, all hell is broken loose. So the first thing we're going to talk about is Helldivers 2, a game that I am not a huge fan of, but I understand that a lot of people are. Helldivers 2 is a huge sensation. It is literally like one of the most popular games anywhere. Like
it is Sony's 7th biggest money-making release of all time.
It's insane. It's really insane.
And most of that's the craziest thing about that, and most of that was PC.
Yeah.
The majority of people playing this game are on PC.
That is even more bizarre. It really does blow my mind. But anyway, it's a massive hit, and it is a game that launched day and date on PC. Normally what happens with PlayStation exclusives is you get an 18-month, 2-year buffer before they release it on PC.
What a difference game as a service makes.
Yeah. Well, this game is a game as a service. It doesn't really have a single player, so they launched it on PC day and date. It has really worked out.
Yeah.
However, in PlayStation's haste to try to maximize this, and apparently this was brought up like 6 months before the game even released. The studio, was it called Arrowhead?
Arrowhead, yeah.
Arrowhead knew this was coming 6 months before the game launched. That people, in order to play it on PC, would eventually have to agree to be a part of PSN, PlayStation Network.
That was supposed to be day one.
Right.
But the problem was Sony expected 75,000 players, and they got something like 350,000.
Right.
So they basically, it was crashing everything. So they basically pulled PSN login requirement until they could implement it to be able to handle as many players as Helldivers 2 had. So now all of a sudden, there's a multiple part thing to this. So all of a sudden they announced their, so that's been out for what, 2 months now?
Yeah.
3 months?
3 months.
3 months. And so they announced, okay, by the beginning of June, you're going to have a PSN login to play this game, even if you already have it on Steam. The problem here was not just that, was all of a sudden you got a lot, because it's like, okay, whatever, you just want to create another, I got to wait for that stupid EA app to load up every time I play Jedi Survivor on Steam too. It's like, that's just a thing. UB Connect asks me 4,000 times if it's okay to install something every time I start up anything that on Far Cry or whatever.
Yeah.
It's just a reality of modern gaming, unfortunately. But part of the problem was PSN is not available in all countries, in most countries. So when it was announced that you needed those, and until then, Helldivers 2 had been available for purchase by Steam everywhere. And so when that was announced, Steam automatically, because all of a sudden they delisted the game in 177 countries because all the countries that PSN wasn't available in. I don't know if you know this, but there are only 195 countries on the planet.
Yep.
So, and then Steam started approving refunds for people who had played for 100 hours, and so they knew Steam. And now that they've reversed the course, it probably will go back to the way it was. But that was one of the big problems, was all these people in all these different countries that had already been playing it and already bought it and sunk all this time into it,
couldn't
play it anymore because they'd been delisted.
We didn't even let them know, though, what the problem is. The problem is that PlayStation has launched this new PSN overlay for PC, where you can... it's part of it's kind of cool in that you can still get the trophies and stuff, even if you're playing on PC.
Yeah, it creates trophies. Mostly it's to report to the shareholders that this many people are playing. Really.
No, it is a ploy. No, there's no doubt about it. It is a ploy by PlayStation to increase the sign-ups on PlayStation Network and boost those metrics and engagement and all that kind of stuff. And what happened is, as Matt said, people were like, F that. I'm playing this on PC. I don't want to deal with crappy PSN.
They got 410,000 negative reviews in 72 hours.
So they carpet bombed the reviews on Steam and bombed it.
And all the Arrowhead people were just like, we don't like this either, but it's not our call.
Yeah, there's nothing they can do about it. Yeah.
And then it actually worked out pretty well, because when Sony reversed, like a bunch of the community people were like, okay, now we all need to reverse our negative reviews, because they did what we wanted. So we have to. And the other thing that I really liked was
But they won't all do it.
No, but a lot of them have.
Some will, yeah.
And the player count is down, but it's recovering. And then one of the things I really liked was somebody in the community made, because capes are a big deal in that game. Yep. So they made a cape design out of the 4 huge dropping orange bars from the negative review thing, because it looks like 4 Helldivers pods coming down. And the CEO of Arrowhead was retweeted it and was like, "We're kicking around names for this right now." So that will probably will be a cape
Yeah.
of that the graph that commemorates this.
Arrowhead has played this.
Arrowhead is
they've played everything perfectly with this game.
Yeah, Arrowhead is super smart. Like, Sony should really pay attention to what they have there.
And they should follow that template with all its future games as a service.
And also, like, I mean, part of the lesson here, I mean, you know, I felt really bad for Arrowhead during all this because they worked on this game for 8 years.
I know.
And, like,
it's pretty crazy.
And to see this, you know, all this get flushed down by Sony just for some stupid corporate demand. And it's like, because here's the thing. If you weren't able to launch with that requirement, you're done. Like, you don't get to implement that later.
No, you're right.
Like, I know you want to have that metric in the shareholder meeting for this super big hit you have, but you know what? You're already making money on it. And PC gamers are the weirdest, most fragile, like, jumpy dipshits you could possibly imagine.
Are,
Because, like, already after this, you know, like you said, some people aren't going to reverse theory, because I already seen people on Twitter and on Reddit going like, you know, there's nothing to celebrate because they're just going to do this and they're going to want to make us subscribe to PS Plus. That's the only way you'll ever get to play Helldivers again. And I'm just like, what are you talking about?
That's not going to happen.
It's literally they just literally want to track you. They want to track the players the same way they track the people on PlayStation. It's to keep their metrics unified, so when they announce their numbers to their shareholders at the financial meetings, they get to look better.
Well, they also want your data. They want your email address so they can start sending you promotions and there's.
They want some, and also they want some kind of unified EULA for online play.
Right.
That's part. I mean, that's
across
why,
all platforms.
That's why the Ghost of Tsushima thing is like, you won't need it for single player, but you will need it for multiplayer.
Nice segue.
Because as long as you go online and you're in a Sony ecosystem, Sony wants kind of a blanket coverage for that.
Yeah, and so that's what happened. People. After this happened with Helldivers 2, people's attention immediately turned to Ghost of Tsushima. And they're like, oh, wait a minute. Like, is this going to happen with all PlayStation games on PC? And actually, with Ghost of Tsushima, it kind of is. Yeah. You're going to need it for the cooperative online play. You won't need it for the single player, but you're going to need it for multiplayer.
But it's like everything needs that for multiplayer. Like everything. You know, I have logins for every other damn company.
Me too.
And for not, you know, I got to log into UbiConnect to play any of those Assassin's Creed or Far Cry games. There's no multiplayer on any of that stuff. I gotta.
Ubi does give you
bonuses
wait for that
at
fucking
least. EA app is the worst.
It really
of
is.
all those things, the EA app is the worst. Sometimes it doesn't even work. Steam doesn't recognize Steam. The game doesn't launch. The game launches and crashes. You know what I tried to play this week? State of Decay 2. It just got in my head. I want to play that again.
Is it still busted?
So, yeah. so I installed it on PC, and I loaded it up, and I realized that I didn't remember how anything worked.
Yeah.
And I was like, you know what? I bet my save, I could probably transfer my save from the Xbox. I had like an 18-hour save on the Xbox. So I did that. I loaded the Xbox version up, and I did some stuff, and I quit so it would load up to the cloud, and I went and installed it on the Xbox app on the PC. Loaded up, there's my save.
Nice.
But here's the thing. I loaded up the save on my Xbox, and it would work for like, it would pop up all these like, because I hadn't loaded that save since February 2020. And it was loading all this new stuff, all the new things that were available, and then it would like crash after like literally like a minute.
It was like too much.
It didn't matter what I did. It didn't matter where I was, what I opened, what I didn't open, just boom, crash back to the desktop basically. So I'm like, okay, I'll load it up on PC and I bet it'll work there. So I load up, crashed in the exact same place.
Wow.
I have never seen that before.
Wow.
Two different platform versions crashing on the same. So, and I was like, I guess I'll start a new game. So I started a new game, and later I loaded the old save and it worked. So whatever it was having trouble processing on the old save, it was able to do on the new save, and then it wasn't a problem anymore.
Interesting.
So that was but to do all that, I had to log into my Xbox account through this like 280p like pop-up thing in the inside of State of Decay, and like it didn't really like the keyboard, and I was just like, oh my god, what is this? Like, and then
at least it worked.
And then it needed, and then Xbox needed like a two-factor authentication thing, but State of Decay 2 was too old to support that, so it just was blank. And I'm like, how do I get it? And it wouldn't recognize that I was logged in on Windows 11 or logged in on the Xbox app on Windows. You had to do it through the game itself, and I'm like,
oh my god!
What is this?
It worked though.
It
That's the crazy part. It worked.
But like, so I understand why people are a little cagey when someone wants to do this, but it's just the reality of PC gaming at this point. Everybody wants you in some ecosystem so they can track you and email you. That's all there is to it.
Yep. So anyway, ultimately, yes, you're going to need to log in to PSN on PC if you want to play the cooperative options in Ghost of Tsushima. But if you just want to play the campaign on PC, you're going to be totally fine.
Yeah, the good news is you're not really missing anything.
Yeah.
I wasn't super
I didn't spend a ton of time with it either. Yeah. So, again, I think PlayStation... we're in a new frontier basically with this stuff, and I think we're just slowly like figuring out how all of it's going to work. There's going to be some bumps in the road, and I think that's really what this was. So Helldivers 2, I think it will go back to the way it was, this thing that everybody's loving playing.
What they should do is offer a really cool incentive if you do sign up for PSN. Like you should get like in-game currency or
a trophy that only you can get on PC
that
or something.
I don't think they can do.
Yeah, I don't either.
Like, trophies are unified.
That was pie in the sky.
But I think some kind of outfit you can, hell, that if
cosmetic or something.
If signing up for PSN is how you get that negative review chart cape,
give them the cape
there
for
you
it.
Go.
That's a good idea, actually.
Yeah.
Are you listening, Arrowhead? So anyway, that's the latest.
Just call the cape democracy in action.
It was a huge thing over the weekend. So, we don't curate on the weekends anymore. I finally gave myself weekends off so I can just play games for GameFace. And so, on Monday, usually there's a huge deluge of content waiting to be curated from the whole weekend long. On Monday yesterday, there was literally 85 stories about Helldivers 2 alone. It was the big story all weekend long, but at the end of it all, they got it all sorted out, and I think people will ultimately be happy.
Also,
about
there's something very fitting about a satire of fascism having this happen, and then the player base takes collective action to speak truth to power,
right?
And forces the authoritarian regime to back down. It's just like, man, no. Sometimes you just hit the zeitgeist.
It just happens.
Everyone's 8 years ago, you couldn't have known what you were gonna do here, but here you are, Arrowhead. Well, fucking played.
It's funny how things end up lining up. Yep. So anyway, there you go. That's the latest on PlayStation exclusives on PC. Next up, we got some new information about Resident Evil 9 this week. Now, you may remember there's a leaker named Dusk Golem who literally just leaks everything Resident Evil and is right about pretty much all of it. And he shared this week some more information. Back like a month ago, he shared that Resident Evil 9 was going to be an open world game. And now this week, he has some more details. He is saying that Resident Evil 9 is still going to be an open world game. It's launching in January 2025 and has been in development for 7 years. What do you think about that? You think that's even possible?
Yeah, I mean, Capcom's got enough teams for that.
Yeah. That's a long time for Capcom to develop a game.
I wouldn't, if I was going to do a big open world sort of, pivot point game, I don't think I'd have the Resident Evil 7 and 8 team working on it.
Yeah. So. I mean, Village was it was pseudo open world like God of War.
Big open areas, yeah. It was like, it's not how I would want to play an open world RE game, I don't know. Well, I'll have to see what it is.
Yeah.
I take Resident Evil kind of as it comes these days. I did think it was interesting that there was some stat. I don't remember if it came from Dusk Golem or Capcom themselves. It was basically like something like 70% of all Resident Evil sales have happened after Resident Evil 7's release.
Wow.
Like
wow, that's insane.
The series is in basically a huge renaissance phase right now, and people are going back for those remakes and picking them up and playing them again or playing them for the first time. And like Resident Evil is healthier than it's ever been.
It is. It's pretty crazy. Now, Rose, who you're seeing right now in the B-roll, most people believe she will be the lead character for Resident Evil 9. She was the focus of most of the DLC for Resident Evil 8, or Village as it's known. And so most people think that she will be the protagonist in this brand new open world take on Resident Evil. It will be interesting to see how they handle Resident Evil when you can run away like for a mile if you want to. I don't know how they're going to manage that. They've been working on it 7 years reportedly.
I would imagine some real big bosses.
Yeah. Really fast enemies that you can't get away from. I don't know. It'll be interesting to see how they handle it.
I'll tell you one thing I predict. There will be a lake. Yeah. And it'll be very scary
and there will be a monster in the lake. Yeah. My guess is, Matt, that we're probably going to see this in like a few weeks at not E3. If they're planning on releasing it in January, seems like you probably want to show it around June.
I don't know.
At least, you'd think.
Not if you have other things to release this year.
Yeah. Which, look, Capcom is on a roll, man.
Oh, yeah.
Of all the publishers in the industry right now, it's probably doing better than almost all of them. It's just crushing, like, all of its financial estimates every quarter. It's just doing really, really well. It's making all the right choices. And so I do have faith that Resident Evil 9 will be a game worth playing. Capcom hasn't made a lot of open-world games. It has proven already, though, that the RE engine can't handle open-world games. So we'll see, but that's the latest on Resident Evil 9. I would not be shocked at all if we get the first look at it here.
They hit it pretty big with an open-world game earlier this year.
They did, yep. And to be fair, I mean, is Monster Hunter open world?
Monster Hunter World is.
Yeah, for the most part.
Rise isn't really.
Nah. Yeah.
It's more like, Monster Hunter's generally been discrete areas in a connected
but bigger.
Yeah.
It has a better illusion of an open world.
I think Monster Hunter World does the best, most convincing impression of an open world game in that series.
Yeah. Who would have thought in 2024 that Resident Evil would be a franchise on the rise? It's crazy. It really is. But that's what we're dealing with right now.
There's definitely a point where everybody just sort of was like, well, it's time to accept that Resident Evil 4 is the best Resident Evil game, and that's just how it's going to be.
Yeah.
But now, I mean, I would still say it's the best Resident Evil
I would
game.
too, actually.
But, like, I have, every once in a while, I'm like, maybe one day.
I think they can beat it.
They might beat it.
I think they can. Yep. So anyway, that's the latest on Resident Evil 9. Next up, we're going to talk about Hades 2, because Hades 2 was Shadow Drop. We kind of ruined this a little bit talking about it in the intro already. But yeah, Hades 2 has been shadow dropped. It is available in PC Early Access right now. Game of the year for a lot of people. The year the first one came out. What not for me. I really enjoyed it, but I'm not a huge roguelite guy. But I would say this might be like the most successful roguelite ever. And maybe the best roguelite ever.
It's up there.
It was, did it come out before Returnal? I think it did, yeah. So it was the one that kind of showed the way. Now I'm guessing Returnal probably had its own ideas way before Hades was released, but...
Yeah, this not very comparable to Returnal, I would say. They're very different takes on the subgenre, but I would say Hades...
Well, they both did the thing where you're powerful the next run. Instead of completely resetting your character, like roguelites before that, you die, you kind of just start all over again. And these two games were the first prominent games where it's like, you know what? You're going to die, but you're going to go back and you're going to actually become a little more powerful for your next run. The cat right now is freaking out over Hades.
Luna really likes Hades, apparently.
Yep.
I don't know. What's his name? Binding of Isaac also let you keep some things and move on. I think the big thing that Hades did, it gave it personality and an interesting story, but it also acknowledged the game mechanics as part of the narrative and part of the world. Like,
that's true.
The fact you're doing this over and over again was part of the story.
Yeah.
And I think that helps because it doesn't take you out. Like sometimes I'd have friends who played things and they're like the roguelike stuff, and they're like, well, how come it starts over and no one notices it starts over? Why am I doing this over and over again? It doesn't make any sense. And it's like this and Returnal both sort of incorporated that conceit into the storytelling, which I think helps a lot in terms of a modern game.
And also, I think helping casual people understand that subgenre as well.
Yeah, you got to give someone a reason why you keep kicking them in the balls, really. That's what it comes down to.
You need to explain it.
And the double ways that Hades figured that out was by making part of the story and by honestly not kicking you very hard.
Yeah.
Because you never really felt like it was a punishment to start over.
Well, later on in the show, we're going to talk about a Souls-like that doesn't look like a Souls-like, and like I noticed the first time you die, like one of the messages you get is you're supposed to keep dying. Because it's like, I think a lot of casual people are going to pick it up and they're going to be like, what the hell's going on? This looks like a kid's game and it's kicking my ass. And so they put the message up, this is normal. You are supposed to die over and over. You're supposed to learn, basically giving the whole Dark Souls spiel,
right? The whole thing, it's like, no, it's okay funny. If you die.
Yeah, it's really funny.
I know you feel like you just worked really hard to get those 100 souls.
Yeah.
But I promise you in 10 hours, you won't even care about 100 souls.
Yeah, so anyway, Hades 2 is live on Steam Early Access right now. You can go buy it. If you've been watching this trailer for the launch of it into Early Access, you've probably seen that, like, the messaging around this Early Access is a little different than most. Like, they're basically saying, like, this game is almost done, but we're really going to take your feedback into consideration, and we're going to be making changes constantly. And to Vincent's point, when he said earlier in chat, like, it already has more content than the first Hades does. Like, we'll talk about the game itself in next week's show, so I don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves here. But
you catch up on chat, by the way.
What'd you say? I need to scroll down. But if you're interested, like, apparently the game does have a ton of content. There's some early access reviews / previews out there as well that you can check out if you want to get a lay of the land. But if you're a big fan of the first Hades, like, I would think it would be pretty hard to resist Hades 2 early access. So maybe you guys will be ahead of us for next week's show, and you guys will be able to contribute a lot to our conversation around Hades 2. Are you excited to play it, Matt?
Once it's done.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, if they're going to send out codes, then sure, I'll give it a try. But like this kind of game in particular, I think needs to be done before you really judge it.
Yeah. Again, it has a lot of content, even in early access. The Abrams says IGN gave it a 9 already. Wow. That's
weird.
How do you feel about reviewing early access games?
I think that's not okay.
I mean, I'll put it to you this way:
if it's improved on 1.0, what, does it get a 10?
Right.
Right. Maybe. I mean, Hades. I wouldn't really bat an eye at Hades 2 getting the 10 necessarily.
Yeah.
But until it's 1.0.
What are you doing?
Touch it for a review score, frankly.
Just so you know, for a really long time, we wouldn't even curate early access reviews to Sifted because I just have an editorial aversion to the whole practice of reviewing unfinished games. Lately, I've been making exceptions. However, when we curate those, we do not tag them as reviews. So if you're to go to our reviews channel and check out all the reviews from the day or whatever, it would not appear in there. We still tag them as previews because, in my opinion, that's what they are.
Yeah, they are.
So we have been a little bit...
I'll certainly give an opinion. Like, I certainly had an opinion about Baldur's Gate 3 like a week after early access started, but that game didn't get 1.0 for 3 years.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I wasn't wrong
about
what I said about it because I saw that was going to be something special. But if you'd reviewed that before it hit full release, you would have been missing so much. It's a different.
It wouldn't have been Game of the Year.
And this probably isn't going to be that different because they said it's close to done and they're going to tweak it and balance it. But again, for a game like this, the tweaks and balances can make or break. You know, that could be the difference between a 9 and a 10. Frankly.
And also, Supergiant Games says that the game is coming out before the end of the year to show you that it's not that far away. They think even with the input of players, it's only
the first one I think was in early access for at least a year.
A year, it was, yeah. So anyway, just so you guys know, it's on your radar. Hades 2 is on Steam Early Access right now if you want to pick it up, and we'll talk about it in next week's show. Next up, one of the biggest teases ever, Matt. I'm curious how you felt over this whole thing. So people, after the madness that was Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League and Rocksteady working on that instead of making a new Batman game, everybody is so excited for the new Batman Arkham anything. And then we finally get it this week. And Matt, it's a VR game. It's a MetaQuest 3 exclusive. It is Batman Arkham Shadow. I mean, I'll say this. It looks pretty darn good for a VR game. I mean, this is no gameplay.
This is just...
I'm just saying the concept looks intriguing, at least.
I guess. It's, I don't care. I mean, I knew there was something up with this when I first saw it pop up. I was like, what is that, a mobile game?
Is it better than a mobile game being a VR game?
Yeah, probably.
That's a tough decision to make.
I mean, calling this Arkham was bold.
Yeah.
Like, I see what you're doing there, WB.
Well, they're trying to keep it alive, basically.
Yeah, they're trying to, remember when you liked this?
Yeah. Remember you liked our Batman game?
I mean, it's not a coincidence that all of a sudden there's an Arkham Origins remake in process like 3 weeks after Suicide Squad drops.
Yeah.
By the way, I think the last I looked, checked their concurrent player base, I think there were 82 people playing that game on Steam.
Oh, wow.
In the middle of the day.
Well, I mean, I guess we could say that it's learned its lesson, though. I mean, it probably figured it out before Suicide Squad even came out.
I told them that years ago. So,
like, you know what? We got to hedge our bets a little bit here and have at least something Batman Arkham.
The first time I saw that thing, I was in the first trailer. I was like, "This is not going to go well."
Yeah,
like, I mean, sure.
Yeah, you were on it right away. You knew immediately that it wasn't going to happen. It took WB a little bit longer, long enough to get this game into development. And the other thing too is that like this is only for MetaQuest 3. It's not coming for now. It's not coming to any other VR HMDs.
Yeah, well, that's even the Quest, the MetaQuest people are kind of pissed because it doesn't work on Quest 2.
Right.
And well, again, at some point you got to move on.
You got to turn a page at some point. Yeah. To be fair though, Meta is like constantly promoting sales for MetaQuest 2 and like it's not like they've let it go away.
No, but it's like you gotta do your own research and make your own choices.
You gotta use Sifted, people. If you use Sifted, you know what the hell's going on. So anyway,
if you Sifted, you probably shouldn't buy a VR headset.
You wouldn't have bought one in the first place if you were using Sifted, probably. You would have bought the first PlayStation VR if you listened to me, though. I'll admit, again, one of my worst calls since I started Sifted. So anyway, Batman Arkham lives, but not in the way that we want. I do agree with you, Matt. I think eventually it will come to other HMDs, but it'll be on a delay. Mm-hmm. Who knows how long Meta's got it locked down? But how nice would it have been, though, for Apple to secure this exclusive for Vision Pro? Which people
talk about something even fewer people would get to play.
Yeah, I guess, but that's the kind of thing that Apple needs to do to get people interested in it.
Yeah, but not for the $3,000. I mean, they know that that's not a consumer level.
Yeah. Well, they're already saying in next year they're going to have a cheaper model of it, and my guess is it just keeps getting cheaper and cheaper and cheaper.
I've been using Apple products since 1986, and I will tell you every single time: do not buy an Apple product until it's on 3 or higher.
Yeah, Gen 3. Yeah, that's usually how it works. I did not get an iPhone until iPhone 5, so I definitely
I got one with iPhone 3, but that was exactly right because I knew people that Blair Herder sat across the cube hall from me and got an iPhone day one, and he loved it. But I was like, that's not
quite there.
Okay,
I had a BlackBerry for a really long time.
Oh, there were definitely people who would not let the BlackBerry go.
I once typed.
Wade and Vance, all those guys were like, "No keyboard. How do you live?"
I could literally type on a BlackBerry. I could type like 40 words a minute on a BlackBerry.
Yeah, I admit I could go faster on that keyboard than I can on the virtual keyboard still.
I wrote an entire review for Madden that was like 1,500 words for game trailers on my BlackBerry on a flight across the country. I wrote a whole freaking review. I got off the flight. I clicked send to Ryan Stevens. He's like, "Did you write this on your BlackBerry?" I was like, "I damn well did." And he's like, "Holy crap,
yes,
man."
I did.
So anyway, just some musings on the VR market right now, which seems very confusing, I think, for most people. It's really hard to tell what the hell's going to happen ultimately. But Quest 3 does seem to be doing pretty well.
Yeah.
Even though Meta's losing like the GDP of like a third world country every quarter over MetaQuest.
They can afford it, I guess.
I just think about what you could do with that money. How many people you could raise out of poverty.
Zuckerberg seems to think that at some point the future is VR. At some point, the way you will interact with Facebook and all that stuff is by going into a VR simulation, and interacting with your family and friends in this like virtual world. And he is going to be the person who his company is going to be the one that people do that in. But you know what? Every time some weird leap of innovation or leap of how people do that kind of social innovation, every time that's happened, it's come from out of nowhere.
Yeah, you're right.
Because this
disruption.
Because that's like, at the time, no one could have predicted Facebook was going to overtake MySpace. And even today, it's like MySpace gave you a bunch of different things, a bunch of more interesting tools than Facebook does.
Yeah.
Like you could play music, and you had like top friends, and there were more things to do there, and Facebook was just slicker.
Yeah.
And Facebook started in colleges as a way to hook up with people.
Yeah,
that helped.
That's what did it. Yeah.
I remember I had someone over it was like 2004 or 2006. It was very early when you could first make Facebook accounts, and you still had to get like a code to make a Facebook account.
Yeah.
And she was like, "Why do you have a Facebook account?" And I'm like, she's like, that's just for like, because she was in grad school.
Right.
And she's like, I thought that was just
for undergrads.
That was for like college kids to hook up with. And I was like, I don't know. I'm at Tech TV. I gotta They get me a code. I put the thing in.
Yep. So anyway, that's the latest on the VR stuff. Batman Arkham lives, kind of. Next up,
it's a zombie, basically.
Pretty much, it is. Yeah. Next up, the big story that broke this morning. So we all know that Microsoft bought Bethesda, and that was 2 years ago?
A couple of years ago, yeah.
A couple years ago. It played pretty nice with Bethesda at first. It allowed everybody to stay, keep making games. Well, all that changed this morning. Microsoft has completely dissolved Tango Gameworks and Arkane Austin. Tango made the Evil Within franchise. It also made Hi-Fi Rush, which is a recent game that everybody really kind of fell in love with. What was the other one? Tokyo... Is that open world game that wasn't really open world, had the dudes with the umbrellas, Tokyo something.
Oh, Ghostwire Tokyo.
Ghostwire Tokyo. It made those 3 franchises, and then Arkane Austin is the studio behind Redfall. And so you may be sitting there wondering, okay, well, what does all this mean?
or perhaps responsible for Redfall.
Yeah.
The funny thing about this, not funny, but like the crazy thing about this is like neither of these studios have actually put out any games that were made under Microsoft.
No.
Like these are games that were in development before Microsoft bought them. Like there were no surprises here.
You're right. That is weird that it would cut the studios without
Yeah.
letting them work on a project, not just under their tutelage, but
And
also having the resources at
And
Microsoft.
Hi-Fi Rush was a surprise hit.
It was,
It
yeah.
had no marketing, no cost there. It sold pretty well. Aaron Greenberg said that it was a pleasant surprise and outdid any of their expectations.
Yeah.
So why would you shut them down? Like what is going on?
But don't forget Mikami left. So Mikami,
Sure, but-
Mikami created Resident Evil, and then he left Capcom, fiddled around for a while with like Clover Studios and a couple other things, then finally launched his big new studio, Tango Gameworks, with Bethesda. He left probably a year ago. Is that right? Maybe longer.
Yeah, I don't remember.
And now he's working at some smaller studio or whatever, but the figurehead of the studio had left, the CEO. He said that he was CEO for like 2 months, and then they were bought, and he was immediately demoted from CEO of his own studio. And he said that was the beginning of the end for him there. He's like, wait a minute, like, I founded this place, and now you bought me, and 2 months later, I'm not the CEO of my own studio anymore. So that was the beginning of the end for him. And so my guess is it was just a bunch of his underlings who he didn't want to take with him to his new studio. So probably the least skilled people on the team, I would guess, that were left at Tango. But they did a lot of work on this game without Mikami there.
Yeah, it turned out
And it turned out pretty dang good. So this studio is gone. And then, as we said, the studio that made Redfall, which was really a black eye for Microsoft because it acquires Bethesda. It has this, and I was pretty excited seeing the initial trailers for this. It's like, hey, we got this game from Arkane coming pretty soon. Arkane had a pretty good reputation at the time. And it was kind of outside the purview, I would say, of that studio a little bit.
Yeah, I mean,
making
the post-release reactions from the studio, like nobody wanted to make this.
Yeah.
Game.
And so ultimately it ended up being kind of a disaster. I don't think the game was as bad as like people made it out to be, but
I do.
It was a high profile release because everyone was like, this is the first game from Bethesda under the Microsoft banner, and this is the sign of things to come. And if it was a sign of things to come, it was a bad sign because most people hated the game. It ended up not really being what they said it was going to be.
Luckily, most people didn't realize it happened.
Yeah.
It was a very under the radar sort of thing.
Yep. And then there was a wrinkle around
this
this
is
game.
another one, by the way. The first time they showed it, I was like, this doesn't seem like it's gonna work.
Yeah.
I mean, actually, the first trailer actually didn't show anything about.
It was
game.
just CG.
It was just the setting.
Yeah.
And then when I found out what it was, I was like, oh no.
Well, I mean, you knew you were going to be hunting vampires from the first.
Yeah,
trailer.
but you didn't know it was gonna be a reheated microwave Left 4 Dead.
Pretty
clone.
much.
Like,
yeah. And that's what it ended up being. And it had
these guys made Prey, right? Austin
they did actually,
Prey.
and that does hurt a little bit.
Yeah, well, because Prey is one of the best.
Arkane
I'm
games,
not a big
in my
fan
opinion.
of the Deus Ex sort of. If you're forced to call them
Immersive
sims.
Yeah.
The dumbest subgenre name in all of gaming.
It doesn't really tell you much about what it
It
really
tells you
is.
nothing, and it's also like every game wants to be immersive and simulate
Yeah.
something. It's like it means nothing.
It's redundancy.
It's the dumbest name for anyway. Prey is probably the best of those.
Yeah.
of all,
I mean, in my opinion, it's my favorite Arkane game. Period.
Yeah, I would say that.
I like it more than Dishonored.
Yeah, I don't like the Dishonoreds very much.
Yeah.
I wish I did.
Yeah,
but I
it is
don't.
one of those games where I'm like, there's something wrong with me because for not liking it.
Yeah, I don't.
I don't know why. It
I
just
mean, I
doesn't
think I
resonate with
like
me.
the Dishonoreds more than you do, but I still
Yeah.
don't really like them very much.
Yeah.
I feel like they lecture me a
Yeah.
bit. It's like, oh, well, you killed people, so you get a dark tendency. I was like, I don't. Why do I have a sword then? Like,
Right.
I'm just playing the game
Yeah.
over here, man. Like, and like your stealth system kind of blows, so I had to kill him.
Yeah. So anyway, it cut these studios. Everybody has been laid off. Arkane Leon, the head guy that worked on Deathloop, he put out like a public statement, like basically chastising Microsoft. Like, it'll be interesting to see if he lasts throughout like the next 5 or 6 days after some of the stuff that he said about this. But I understand it. Like, if you're another one of the studios that was just purchased by Microsoft, this has to make you feel really nervous.
Yeah. Well, I know someone who got laid off from the place he was at in January. and he said today that he's gotten offers from 4 other studios since then.
That's great.
And with today's news, all 4 of them have shut down.
Oh, geez.
Since he was laid off in January.
Wow.
All 4 places he got job offers from no longer exist.
The timing for today's episode of Pactor Factor for our patrons, and it'll be live in a week for everybody else on our YouTube channel. The topic just today just happened to be, why are there never layoffs in Japan? Not only are there never layoffs, Japan is increasing salaries and profit sharing with its developers.
Yeah, like how come this stuff happens to Tango and Austin, but like Team Eco didn't put a game out for 11 years.
I know.
And then,
I mean, watch Pactor Factor. I'm not going to ruin his response here in GameFace. Go watch the show if you're a patron. It's live right now. But the timing of that episode being published today was just like, it's almost like I knew it was going to happen, and I planned it for today. I did not. It was just dumb luck. Sometimes that stuff happens in content. But anyway, so Microsoft has cut those 2 studios, plus they cut another studio. I think Keeley said there was actually a 4th. And there's a mobile studio that they did announce in their announcement.
Yeah, there's 2. There's 4. There's Alpha Dog.
Alpha Dog.
Was that? And then there's another one that got folded into Bethesda.
Yeah, and that's the 4th one that Keeley mentioned that other people had not mentioned.
Yeah, I can't remember what the name. I think I began with an R.
Yeah,
I think I can't remember what it was.
And I just want to say, before I came over here, I was like doing some last minute curating, getting stuff on the site before I came over here to do GameFace. And I will say, Matt, one story popped up from a little website. Hey, maybe Phil Spencer should be fired. And I was like, okay, people are starting to get it. And then 5 minutes later, what pops into the admin? A 2,000-word editorial from Kotaku saying Phil Spencer should be fired.
Roundhouse. That's what the other one was.
I've been saying it for how many years now? That Phil Spencer should be on the hot seat?
Roundhouse got folded into Bethesda. That used to be Human Head.
Yep, there you go. So that's the 4th one.
Vincent says.
So what do you take away from this, Matt?
No one is safe. Everybody run.
Yeah, for the hills. Yeah. Or start your own studio where people can't mess with it.
I guess, but until you get bought and get shut down 6 months later. There was a video of when they were acquiring all these things, acquiring Bethesda, of Phil Spencer and a couple other Microsoft bigwigs talking about how they made a mistake with Lionhead, shutting it down, buying it in 2006 and shutting it down in 2016. And they had to learn from that mistake that you have to. I'm like, what you learn is to shut it down faster? Don't take 10 years, take 10 months?
Maybe what he said he learned isn't what we thought he learned.
Apparently not. I don't know. The thing to me is I can't believe you shut these companies down before they even make a game for you.
Yeah.
What did you buy them for then?
Because you have to assume, okay, maybe they haven't made Game of the Year candidates so far, but we get them into our ecosystem. They have our support of our Q&A.
We'll see what you come out with.
All the libraries.
And it's like Tango already made a Game of the Year nominee that made money for you last year. Redfall wasn't good, but Arkane Austin made Prey. Everybody liked Prey. Prey's got great moments. I mean, even if you don't like that genre, Prey's got some cool stuff in it. I don't understand why you don't just let these people cook a bit.
Yeah, and I don't think the craftsmanship was...
It's not like Microsoft's out of money.
Yeah. I don't think the craftsmanship was an issue from either one of those studios.
But then what's happening?
I don't understand it. I am as flummoxed as you, honestly. I have no idea why this happened.
It was like Phil was like, "Oh, Sony thinks they get all the bad press this week. Fucking watch this.
Hold my beer."
Yeah,
it's not good. And in fact, I want to jump to you guys and see what you guys are saying here in the chat about this. Silkshake, but Shane, Phil is our friend, friend, Xbox friend. But he makes a good point there. Phil is a master of making people like him. Mm-hmm. He always says...
He's a very affable man.
He always says the right things. But then when he leaves, after he says those things, he goes and does things differently. He doesn't do what he says he's going to do. It's like he talks about all these things holistically. Oh, yeah, it's important to preserve game history. And then he does nothing about it. Mm-hmm. He gives lip service, but then never follows through with the actual actions. And he's been doing that for a while. J-Force Breaker says, corporate dumpster fire as usual. Hey, you don't have to convince me that corporate America is a complete disaster right now. Link's so good. Phil Spencer needs to go. East Demon says, Prey was a commercial flop. You're right. But what I was getting to earlier when I said that, hey, these studios are good craftsmen, is that sure, maybe some of their games bomb. That doesn't mean they can't make a Game of the Year still. because they're technically, like, Redfall technically was fine.
Yeah.
It's just like people didn't like the concept and the way that it played out.
Redfall wasn't technically. It was missing a lot.
Well, it was also greenlit, like, by some other person.
Right.
Like, Microsoft had nothing to do with that. So, again, to your point, it's like...
I mean, some people were surprised they let internally they were surprised they let the project continue. Like,
yeah.
There were people who worked on Redfall who were like, when Microsoft bought them, were like hoping Microsoft would look at it, see it was a mess, and kill it.
Because they didn't want to keep working on it. They could see where it was all headed. It makes no sense.
And they were right, weren't they?
They were right, yeah. Well, they should be. They're neck deep in it every day.
And they were righter than they knew. It's like, we don't want to release a bad game. It's like, that bad game seems to have killed the whole studio.
Yep. Quickster says, I think Phil threw around too much daddy Microsoft money, and now the number crunchers are like, are
on that division's ass.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Erebus says, don't be mistaken, I think today's news is utter BS, but Devil's Advocate, could it be as simple as Tango had nothing, all their ideas were bad, and they couldn't see a path back for them without Mikami? I mean, you have an IP there that hasn't been a blockbuster. Mm-hmm. I mean...
But it has potential. And you don't
it turned a profit for Bethesda,
and
the first
Microsoft
two
doesn't really
games.
have a lot of horror in the chamber.
Right.
So it's not like they're repeating themselves.
Yeah, and State of Decay 3 is coming when?
Never.
Like, maybe never?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. I think it was a huge mistake. I think that there was something in these studios that they could have got out of.
I think the smarter move would have been to wait and see what they were. I mean, maybe they already knew what they were making next, but like probably not, because Austin seemed like it was pretty all hands on deck to try to fix Redfall, whatever that would entail. And Tango was working on Evil Within 3, so maybe you knew how that was turning out. But like, I don't know. Like, no one's making something as good as Resident Evil 4 in the horror space, but it's not like the enemy with the Evil Within games were bad.
Yeah. Ashes in the Hourglass says that Nintendo has like a 98% employee retention. That's their secret formula. Well, you got to realize that there's generations of people growing up in Japan that love Nintendo, and working at Nintendo is like a dream. And granted, there are people in America that are like that too. The dream is more real for people in Japan.
We bring up State of Decay because it's the other horror game, not that Tango was making it.
Yeah, that's why we brought it up. He mentioned that Microsoft didn't have a horror franchise really, and I there is one, but we never see it.
Yeah,
so.
Undead Labs may or may not even. I mean,
because they also
talk about something that I would have expected to be shut down by now.
Before Arkane Austin.
Yeah, before the studios that are actually outputting things.
Yep. I mean, Undead Labs, their games come out, they're broken for the first, year. Yep. They're on the market.
And still are, judging by me trying to play that save.
Yeah.
Like, playing that game is like some kind of, weird tightrope act, because I never know what's going to crash it or what's going to... And it's crazy. And it
really
still gets updates once in a while. But, it's... I love the idea of those games, but they must be real hard to make because they feel like they're put together with tape and string and popsicle sticks.
I agree. Yep. Retro Modern Gamer says, I guess the Prey IP is dead forever now. Maybe. I mean Arkane still exists.
Yeah, I think Arkane Lyon could still make
it's just Arkane Austin that went away. Yeah. Arkane's still around. The IP
they
still
own
around.
They own the IP, but they could... God knows who they... Playground Games make a Prey game.
Matt, all I can say is when all these acquisitions started, this is not how I saw it all playing out. This is...
it was kind of like a worst case scenario, but it's
this is like worst case scenario. This whole thing, buying of Activision and not being able to keep Call of Duty exclusive, everything has become worst case scenario.
At least Lionhead got to flounder for 10 years before they, took Milo and Kate to sink that ship. But this is just you released the two games we knew you had when we bought you,
and now we want to get rid of you.
Get out. Yeah, it's what?
So weird, man.
Not you.
I don't. Yeah. She's like, what? So anyway, that's a huge story that just dropped this morning, right into our laps before we did GameFace. But there's other Xbox stuff that came out this week. It's been a busy week for Microsoft. So a bunch of release dates leaked for Microsoft's games. I think I have it in my notes here. Call of Duty is coming in October. Avowed and Microsoft Flight Simulator are coming in November. And Indiana Jones and the Great Circle is coming in December. We'll see. It may not make the cut. I think we may have mentioned this in last week's episode.
That feels tentative.
Yep.
Indiana Jones, anyway.
And then we found out that when we learned that Microsoft's games were going to start going to other platforms, I think the first thing that, at least for me, the first thing I said was Hi-Fi Rush on Switch. Yeah. And it wasn't. So when they finally announced this stuff, Hi-Fi Rush was coming to PS5. It wasn't coming to Switch. As it turns out, it is in fact coming to Switch. It was leaked this week. I think the ESRB rated it for Switch or whatever. So Hi-Fi Rush, Tango's last game, as it turns out now, is coming to Switch eventually.
You're all fired, but you're all going to keep making us money for a while.
Yep. And then the final news was a bunch of Starfield information. So we got a big update for Starfield that launched this week.
No, the 15th.
Oh, it launches the 15th?
It went up on the early, like the beta build on Steam, like May 1st, I think.
Okay.
But it goes up for everything, like fully on the 15th.
Okay. And it will have a 60 frames per second update for Xbox Series X. New ship decorating options. Matt, I'm sure that makes you happy.
Not really.
No?
Well, because it's just that you can get modules with no furniture in them and put your own furniture everywhere. And I can't possibly explain to you how much I don't care about what style chairs are in my ship.
There was that. There's the decorating options. There's better surface maps. Mm-hmm. What does that even mean?
The lighting and reflections on the ground is a little better, and the just like slightly improved environment stuff, it seems like.
And then there was, I think, one other thing. Oh, improved city navigation. And then the big...
Yeah, the cities have better maps now.
Yeah.
And like some people are like, oh my god, the cities are so small. I'm like, yeah, did you play the game? They're all kind of small.
Yeah.
I don't know why the Western themed town has dirt roads 200 years after it was established, but like you're just going for a vibe, I guess. I don't know.
That's pretty funny. But then the big news from Starfield this week is that there is story DLC coming, and it is launching this fall before the end of the year.
Which makes a lot of... I mean, if you've played the game and managed to pay attention to the story much, the one thing they talk about a lot that they never really fully engage with is the Van Newell Empire, whatever those... Where the dark-haired companion woman is from, who escaped from, or she's an agent from, or whatever. They're like kind
of
the one
that you meet right at the beginning.
Yeah, they're kind of like real, not the blonde one, but the dark-haired one.
Mm-hmm.
She's like a secret agent from them, and she ends up joining you instead.
There's always mystery right from the beginning of the game.
Like,
who are these
people? They're like a mysterious, like insular empire that no one really knows much about, and you never actually go find anything out about them. So I was like, well, that has to be the DLC then.
Yeah.
Because that's how Bethesda rolls. Like, we're going to set this thing up, and then you're going to go deal with them later. It's kind of what they did with vampires and werewolves in the Elder Scrolls game.
Yeah.
All that. So that's cool. That's an idea.
And again, coming before the end of the year.
And Todd said it's massive.
Yeah.
Said it's huge.
It could be a big story at the end of the year.
And traditionally, their DLC has been better than, I mean, certainly Fallout. I think the best Fallout, Bethesda-era Fallout stuff has been the DLC.
Yep.
What was it? Honest Hearts and Old World Blues and all that.
Yeah.
Like when you get a nice little self-contained, not Apparition Anchorage, but when you get a nice little self-contained little module, they do a pretty great job usually.
Yep. So anyway, lots to look forward to from Starfield in the near future. So a little bit of good news from Microsoft to kind of offset all the bad. Getting the release dates for some of its games.
Although I'd imagine a lot of people aren't going to consider more Starfield to be an amazing piece of news.
That's a good point. One thing I would say, I think in Phil Spencer's case especially, Hellblade 2 is a huge freaking game.
Yeah, Hellblade 2 really needs to deliver.
And that's coming in like 2 weeks here. We'll be talking about it on GameFace.
And Hellblade 2 probably shouldn't be under that kind of scrutiny and pressure.
It's not the type of game that you want to have in that spot.
No, it's not a game that's going to really do that, probably.
Yeah.
But it's going to have those expectations placed on it anyway, whether it's realistic or not, and God knows what happens to Ninja Theory as a result.
Do you think Phil Spencer's going to get fired?
I don't know. I don't know what the powers that be over there think about him or what he's doing here.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe some high-level Microsoft executive was a big Hi-Fi Rush fan, and it's all going to come down now. But I don't think, probably not.
I don't think so either. I don't think they'll fire him because I think they're like, well, who else are we going to get? They'll probably say, oh, he was a visionary with Game Pass, but who knows where the idea for Game Pass came from internally? Like, someone could have pitched it to him, but ultimately as a leader, it's your decision to make the calls on that stuff. So,
but also, like, he just shut down 2 studios that make really prime Game Pass fodder.
Yeah.
Like, maybe a lot of people wouldn't want to pay $70 for Redfall or for Hi-Fi Rush or for Enemy Within 3 or Evil Within 3, but I bet you people would pay $15 to download them on Game Pass.
Yeah.
Like, those are the kind of games that people would impulse subscribe for.
And that they need more, because it's just, there's a disparity.
You need a fire hose, basically, to keep that service going, especially if you're drying up the ability to pay for third parties to be on there, which is apparently slowly starting to happen.
Well, PlayStation has figured out that it's okay to have a couple games here and there that don't cost $200 and some million to make. They cost $80 million to make. And instead of selling 16 million copies, you sell 5 or 6 million copies. Stellar Blade, Helldivers 2. Helldivers 2 went even beyond that. So I think Microsoft...
that was definitely the plan with Helldivers.
Yeah, I mean, there's like... It's okay to have filler games. Games that aren't going to be Game of the Year contenders, but are still good and people want to play.
And every once in a while, one of those filler games blows up like Helldivers
like
did.
you just don't know.
You never know where that's coming from.
Exactly.
I mean, you go back in time and show everybody a bunch of games that didn't exist yet, like 15 years ago, and be like, do you think anyone would have picked PUBG out of that lineup as the breakout? As the thing that was going to change games?
Well, it was very unique, but it was also very rough.
Broken.
Yeah.
It was
like busted,
ugly.
really. And ugly, yeah.
Like, it just...
Probably not. People would have said, I want to take your idea and give it to a skilled team.
Well, I mean, that is kind of what Fortnite
Which is kind of what happened, yeah.
But, like, what I'm saying is, like, without PUBG, you don't get that random...
No, you're right. Somebody took the risk on it.
They're like, let's just put that in there as see what happens, and we'll look what happened.
Yep.
So, like, you never know where that's coming from.
Yep. So, anyway... Lots of news coming out of Microsoft this week. Most of it bad, but at least a shade of some good information, at least. Let's see.
Minecraft. Who could have predicted that?
Right. I mean, that's another one. Again, somebody took a risk on it, and boom.
Did you know somebody did an adaptation of the 3-body problem in Minecraft?
No.
That's one of the adaptations you can watch of the 3-body problem. It's just in Minecraft. If someone built it in Minecraft, and you just watch that.
I learned yesterday you can program Tetris while playing Tetris. It's a crazy industry. Anyway, that's the latest on Microsoft. Oh, also, one final thing. Microsoft is having an E3 press conference, along with Nintendo as well, by the way.
We're really getting into some kind of platonic ideal of E3 question at some point here, where it's like, E3 doesn't exist anymore, but we're having all these same things, and people keep calling them E3 conferences, even though E3 isn't happening. So what is the sound of one E clapping seems to be in place here.
It's a little weird. I think it's just nomenclature.
It's the time of the year.
Yeah. I mean, we call it not E3 now instead of calling it E3. I've noticed that it's caught on everywhere. Everyone's calling it not E3.
Yeah, and somewhere in the corner, Jeff Keighley's like, Summer Games Fest!
Not quite as catchy, bro. Sorry. So anyway.
Sigif. No, that doesn't work.
Yep.
You should have named it something that could be pronounced as an acronym.
Yeah, seriously. That matters. It really does. So anyway, Nintendo announced...
Although SGF could become Super Jeff.
That's true.
Super Jeff Extravaganza.
Right.
There you go. That's your new name.
It would probably do better than Summer Game Fest. Because people don't know whether it's Game Fest or Games Fest.
Yeah.
I mixed it up for the first 2 years.
What else don't you like automatically get less excited when something is a fest?
Yep.
Isn't there something about that word where you're like, that's something something my grandma would go to, you know, like.
Yep. So anyway, Nintendo this morning announced that it is also having a not E3 press conference in the first week of June. So we have at this point we have Microsoft, Bethesda, which is kind of the same thing at this point. Call of Duty, Nintendo, Ubisoft, Capcom hasn't announced yet. Who else we got left? PlayStation.
Yeah. So I mean, Sony's got something coming.
Yeah. We'll talk about that in a minute as well. So Nintendo announced this morning that actually overnight in Japan, that it is doing an E3 Direct basically. But then it also finally, for the first time, recognized that the Nintendo Switch 2 is a thing.
The least hype system announcement in the history of video games.
It admitted that it is a thing, and it also said that it will not be announced or any information shared about it at its not E3 Direct.
Yeah, it's like, it exists. We're not going to talk about it ever. Please be excited.
Well, they did say that they will talk about it before the end of the fiscal year.
Yeah.
So they will announce the Switch 2, or whatever the hell it ends up being called, before March 31st, 2025. That's when its fiscal year ends. So we had kind of counted on it releasing on March 2025. Yeah. I don't know if that's going to happen now.
I love that it's like, hi, this is the president of Nintendo. It was like, It was like a voicemail. It was like someone left me a voicemail.
Yeah.
It's like
About
the
the
president of
Switch
Nintendo was just like, oh, and yeah, we're gonna do that, but not till like probably next year. It won't be at the E3 thing, so just don't expect that.
Yeah.
Because we don't want you to be disappointed. Okay, bye. It was the lowest key way to drop
kind of
any of
Nintendo
that.
in a nutshell, though, isn't it? That's kind of how it rolls.
So buttoned down.
It's really funny. So a couple other things were announced, too. Princess Peach has sold over 1 million copies, which just shows you when you have an installed base as big as Switch, if your game isn't complete crap, you're going to sell some units of that freaking game. Mario vs. Donkey Kong, the remake of that, or the remaster of that also has sold over 1 million copies now. Nintendo is just, it can't do no wrong. It's also sold 140 million Switches at this point. Nintendo does think Switch sales will drop by about 15 to 20% this year, but it does also believe that Switch is ultimately going to become Nintendo's best-selling console ever. So we'll see if that actually plays out, how that plays out. But Nintendo said that its not E3 press event is going to be all just Switch games that are coming in the second half of the year. So it's going to be all Switch, no Switch 2. And when do you think now we're going to hear about Switch 2? Or Super Nintendo Switch, or whatever the hell it ends up being called.
Probably in Q1 next year.
You really think so? You think they'll wait until 2025?
Yeah. Because that indicates to me that it is not coming as early as we thought it might.
Yeah, this news was a little disappointing to me.
That might be a late summer, early fall release.
Yeah, it kind of seems like it. So, a little bit of disappointing news from Nintendo, but man, when you're making that kind of money,
you don't really need to hurry.
Like, why would you ever be in a rush if you're still just, Switches are flying off shelves? It's like,
oh my god, there's no new stuff. It's just remasters and remakes and those remakes are selling like crazy? Okay, I'll just everybody chill out.
Yeah. We put 20 dudes on that and we sold 1 million of them in the first month? I wouldn't be in any rush.
Wow, this is easy.
It really does become easy at a certain point. But that's what happens when you have 140 million consoles out there. Like right now, PS5's at 50 million. And so, it's triple what you have on PlayStation 5. The potential audience, potential number of consumers to buy your games is just... Right now, Nintendo used to say it with, the DS, is just printing money.
Yeah.
Printing money. Everything it does just turns to gold at this point. So, again, it's good to see that we're really getting pretty much a legitimate E3-ish thing happening in early June. And again, we'll probably talk about our plans for that in next week's episode of GameFace. And then finally, a couple smaller things. So it was leaked yesterday. Again, all this news has happened in the last 24 hours. It was leaked yesterday that it looks like there's going to be a PlayStation showcase next week. And the reason it was leaked out is because there's this ridiculous internet beef going on between Kendrick Lamar and Drake, where they're talking smack to each other, they're writing diss tracks about each other, and people were waiting for Kendrick Lamar's next diss track response, and one of his buddies, who's his DJ or whatever, said, that's not going to be coming anytime soon because he has a thing that he's doing with a PlayStation showcase next week that he needs to get finished. These people are oblivious that there's people like us who are waiting with bated breath to learn about this stuff, and he's just there's some PlayStation showcase thing next week that he's working on, and it's what? Okay.
Yeah, he probably doesn't even realize that that's not a known
thing. He just everybody knows that,
Although,
right?
To be fair, if you work in the music business or you work tangentially with a musician, you might expect someone to know that a showcase is happening more than a week out. That's not a super weird assumption to make, I would say.
I think it's an indictment on how weird the video game industry is. Because somebody probably told him, oh my god, nobody knew about that yet. And his first response probably was what? I don't give a crap. That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard.
Why wouldn't you publicize this show you're doing? That's half that guy's job is to make sure you know that something's happening weeks before it happens.
It's so funny. So anyway, it looks like there's going to be a PlayStation showcase next week. Thanks, Kendrick Lamar's DJ.
All I know about that beef is what you have just said and the fact that it exists.
And that's all you need to know, Matt.
Nothing about it.
I did notice that, it was just getting shoved into my social media feeds by the algorithms yesterday. I was what is going on? Why is I hate Kendrick Lamar. I don't like Drake's music either. Why is all this stuff in my feed?
Because it's the hottest thing. I saw a thing where I'm can this be summed up? No, it cannot. Okay,
no,
we're just not
then I don't care. I'm going to move on. Yeah. So anyway, we got something good out of a stupid rap beef. Never would have thought that would happen. Another smaller story this week, limited run games, which everybody put on this pedestal as these saviors of physical video games. this week they started sending out 3DO games that were burned onto CDRs.
Whoops.
Whoops. That's one way to put it.
I assume they weren't supposed to be that.
Oh, no. They're supposed to be professionally pressed games that they send to a factory to have made, and they're burning them themselves on their fucking PCs. Like, what the hell are they doing? How about just trashing your company's reputation overnight? Like, what the hell were they thinking doing that? I get it. They probably sold, like, 500 3DO games or something, and they're like, man.
I didn't even know they were doing 3DO
I didn't either. So they probably didn't have big orders for it, and they're like, man, like, it'll probably be okay if we just do this right.
Yeah.
No.
How many 3DO people can there be?
Enough. All it takes is one to go on the internet and be like, WTF.
Like if I'm ordering like Saturn reissues and they just send me a bunch of sugar cookies.
Yeah,
it's like, wow, who really knows? Who even knows what Saturn games were?
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, have you ever bought anything from Limited Run?
I think so, but
I never have.
I don't remember what it was. I think I've definitely ordered a couple of things. I think I ordered that Jurassic Park collection, but then I canceled it because it sounded dumb. Mm-hmm. And I realized I don't really like any of those games anyway.
Yeah, I know a lot of people love that company.
I just don't. Here's the thing. Like I know it's in CDR, they all kind of feel like bootlegs to me because they're not official.
No, I agree. Yeah,
you know,
it feels like they're. I think so as well.
You know what I mean? It's like to me, it feels like an Etsy store,
right?
And it's just like it's cool, but it doesn't feel like I have an actual copy of that.
Maybe people shouldn't have been all that surprised that they sent out CDRs.
Yeah, other than the Switch releases that only go through there, a lot of it really feels a little fly by night and always has to me.
Yeah.
The Switch,
and as it turns out,
and yeah, there you go. I mean, what did they were they just like handwritten? Like
no, I think they had like labels on them or whatever. Yeah, because people looked on the back, you can tell.
Yeah,
CDR.
you can tell. But like I have I have a couple friends who make like burn things of like like one guy who like just is obsessed with having all the extras for every release of a movie in the same place. So he makes his own cases and burns his own discs.
Does he screen print the discs?
He does.
Wow.
And like they look really good.
Yeah, you can do it totally.
But he has his own collection of Lord of the Rings with every. The 4K versions and then every extra that's ever been put out on every DVD and every Blu-ray and everything because they don't include all of them in everything. Right. So he wanted them all in one case. So he built like a whole giant case of like 10 discs and did the whole thing for himself. When I got the Z to A Twin Peaks collection, which is like all the Twin Peaks stuff, it's the movies and the 3 seasons and the whole thing. He gave me a burned disc in the same like visual like design style as the discs in that set. He's like, here's the this disc has the extras from the old DVD set that did not transfer over to the new one.
No.
So now you have everything.
Wow. That's cool.
So it's like there are people who do that and make him look real but yeah, as soon as you flip it over, it's like, oh look, it's blue.
Yeah. Yep, it's easy to tell. And then our final story for today's housekeeping is just a small aside because we just talked about it. I think it was last week or the week before. X-Defiant is finally coming out. We talked about it, I think it was last week.
All 5 of you.
Yeah.
You're real excited.
No, X-Defiant did good, man. Like, its beta was huge. Like, there was hundreds of thousands of people that played it. For those of you who don't know, it's Ubisoft's take on Call of Duty that features, quote-unquote, all-star Ubisoft characters, which means a bunch of people that kind of look like Sam Fisher.
Yeah, until you put Rayman in this, I ain't buying it. Until I can play Ezio, you can just go fuck off.
Ezio with an AK-47.
Yeah.
So anyway, this is coming out finally on May 21st. It is free to play. We will cover it in its final version here on GameFace when it comes out. But one to put on your radar for sure. Like if you're a big Call of Duty player and you're tired of giving Activision or now Microsoft your money, this is one to keep an eye on. It is. I had a lot of fun with it when I played it in the beta. I know that. So
maybe if they don't want to do like main characters, they could have his uncle come in and his uncle just run around going, "It's a me, Mario."
Way to get around all those licensing issues with Nintendo anyway.
Oh, they fought to keep that line in.
Yeah.
UB management was very worried about that one.
I'm sure. Yep.
The two lines they fought to keep in Assassin's Creed was the "It's a me Mario" thing and the thing where Ezio's mother says, "I want you to find an outlet," and he says, I do, mother. He says, "I mean something other than a vagina." Yubi was very nervous about that.
I'm sure it was. So anyway, there you go. That's our housekeeping for GameFace episode 386. As I said in the open, we have 4 game reviews in today's show, and we're about to get to those. But before that, here's a word from our sponsor, our awesome sponsor, LS Cream.
LS Cream is a fine cream liqueur created by fellow gamer and sifter Stevens Charles. It's inspired by an ancestral recipe from Haiti called Cray Mass, and a double gold winner for its original taste at the New York Wine and Spirit International Competition. LS Cream can be enjoyed on the rocks or as a mixer for drinks with its rich blend of fresh cream and neutral grain spirits with notes of coconut, vanilla, cinnamon, and nutmeg. It's great in coffee or to make espresso martinis. To learn more, discover amazing drink recipes, or to track down your own bottle using a handy store locator, head to creamls.com/sifted. That's creamls.com/sifted.
That's right. It's time to Cray Mass that ass with some LS Cream. I found a new use for LS Cream this week, or actually, my wife did. So my wife lately, we got like a new mattress and a bunch of new bedding and stuff, and she has not been able to sleep. And she's like been going through like this sleep deprivation thing for the last week. And so she just poured a glass of milk and poured a little bit of LS Cream in her milk and slept like a baby. I was like, how did you find another use for LS Cream? It's freaking awesome. So again, not only is LS Cream awesome, it is very versatile. You can find a number of different ways to make everything taste good. So again, go to creamls.com/sifted. That's SIFTD. Their website is flipping awesome. You get drink recipes there, like all the drinks that you just saw in the ad. You can learn how to make those there, and they're not as hard as you think. But most importantly, you can figure out how to get LS Cream. You can figure out how to buy it online. There's a store locator there that'll show you where you can go locally to get it. And if you go to your liquor store and it's not there, ask them where it is. Seriously. I did that when I went to Pennsylvania. All the liquor stores there are run by the state. It was not in there. And I was like, where is LS Cream? And they're like, oh, that's above our pay grade. There's people in Harrisburg that like do all that stuff. So if you go into your local liquor store and it's not there, raise hell. Tell them, get LS Cream in there and start buying it. Again, go to creamls.com/sifted for their awesome website that'll get you hooked up with everything you need to enjoy LS Cream. And with that, it's time to get on with GameFace 386 proper. We're going to kick things off with a review of a game that we had hoped to squeeze into last week's show, but unfortunately we could not. And so here we are talking about Tales of Kenzera Zao. Matt, how far did you get in the game?
The second of the three great spirits.
Oh, wow. So you made it a good ways then.
Yeah.
I got to the first great spirit, and that's where I stopped. But I feel like I've got the loop.
You've got the gist.
I think I've got the bulk of it down as far as like how the game works and how the game plays. Matt, what are kind of your top of mind impressions of the game overall?
Like the setting and the setting and the mythology are fresh. Like I don't know much about it.
Buntu, is it Buntu?
I guess I can't remember what it is. I did play the game in Kiswahili, which
so you can play it in the native language or in English.
I've been playing it in Kiswahili and it was good.
I've been playing it in English, and the voice acting's great in English too.
Mm-hmm.
And basically, you play as a young boy whose father has just died, and he can't deal with it. And so he goes to the god of death, and he asks the god of death, like, how can I bring my father back? And he basically says, you can go and collect these 3 spirits, and if you collect them all, then we can maybe bring your dad back. And so you set out on a mission to collect those 3 spirits, along with the god of death. He's like your sidekick for the entire game. And there's banter that goes back and forth between the two of them the whole time. Not very witty, but pretty insightful. And I learned a lot about the culture from the back and forth between the two of them.
And, I mean, it is very much about the loss of a father.
Yeah.
Like
it's a story about grief.
It's a mourning tale, really. And, but at core as a game, it's a Metroid game.
Not a Metroidvania.
No, because you're not really you're gathering XP and getting levels for skill points and filling out a small skill tree, but really it's Metroid. It's not about leveling up and becoming more powerful. It's about finding the new item that lets you get to the new area.
Yeah, the skill trees in this are small. Like you get one. So one of the big mechanics in this game is masks that
they really just enhance the abilities you already have.
Yeah. So, but they're like elemental. So you get like a fire mask, and then all of a sudden all your attacks have fire attached to them. And then you get like a moon mask, and the moon mask lets you freeze water. I don't know why they didn't call it the water mask, or the ice mask.
It's moon and sun, because, I mean, at core, the sun mask lets you do melee with fire,
right.
and the moon mask lets you shoot, like, cold blue light.
Yeah. And there's a lot of puzzles built around the moon mask where there's running water. You need to shoot it with the mask, and then it freezes the water, allows you to traverse areas you couldn't get to before.
Yeah, well, they get various enhanced, like, and then like shortly after that, the sun mask, you get to throw these flaming spears. It can power up doors and open, but mostly it opens stuff. You can use all that stuff in combat as well. Like, you can freeze enemies. You can like spear them with the sun spear and knock them back into things that hurt them and stuff. There's a lot of options there. And then there's like, some enemies have shields that you have to like break down before you can actually hurt them or stun them. And then some shields are elemental, so you have to use one mask or the other to actually bring it down. Which can be difficult when a bunch of stuff's happening at once. It can get frenetic.
It can get hectic for sure.
I would argue that between some of the larger fights and the challenges in this, the game doesn't actually control snappy enough to justify what it wants you to do sometimes.
Yeah, I like the traversal mechanics. You do a lot of double jump dash in this game. Like, you have to become a master of the double jump dash. It is used over and over again.
The other thing I kept thinking was there's a lot of backtracking in this game.
Yeah.
Like, even by the standards of this genre.
Yeah.
Like, there's a bunch of times when I get down to, like, go down in the mine and get the key, and I get down to get the key. I'm like, okay, cool. How do I get out of it? Oh,
you have to
I just
back.
got to walk all the way back. Yeah, okay.
The level design is a little lacking. The other thing I would say too, Matt, is that like there's lots of times where they don't tease the areas. So you run and you get to like a dead end. You're like, oh, I don't think I can do anything. You try everything. You're like, well, I tried everything. I can't go any further this direction. You go back, like sometimes you'll go right over the area where you need to go down because the camera never gives you that little glimpse that there's a thing down below where you can go down instead of just going side to side.
Yeah, the camera's a little behind the curve a bunch of times. Like, even just running along to along the just open area, sometimes the camera just sort of lags behind him.
Yeah.
Like that, I'm like, can you catch up, please? Like, it's odd.
Yeah.
There is definitely kind of the first game jitters in places, but like, it was clearly made with heart and sincerity, and that is a nice thing to see.
I thought the platforming felt really good in this. Like, it got to the point where I was just like, I didn't have to think anymore. I had just become a master of, again, the double jump and dash.
Sometimes there were times when like the dash, like you can only do the dash once per jump, and there were places where I really thought doing this thing, something should reset the dash, and it didn't.
Yeah.
And it was just sort of like, so the key of the puzzle was basically try to get through this whole area perfectly so you still have the dash to get through the last part. And that was kind of annoying. It does run out of kind of ideas for puzzles and things pretty early on. Like, you're doing the find the key, open the gate, jump the thing, climb the thing stuff pretty.
That's pretty much the
whole
loop.
Deal.
Yeah.
Sometimes it changes. Sometimes the backtracking isn't too bad because like when you can then turn things to ice or do whatever, you can open new ways. Or it changes.
It's got that
things
Metroid
up.
thing where you got this new ability. Now you're like, oh, where can I use it?
It's just that you're already retraversing stuff you've already done real fast in this game, and I was a little surprised by that. That's not really modern Metroid design.
No, I mean, literally in the first, 30 minutes, you're already starting to do some backtracking. Yeah, it happens real fast, for sure.
There is fast travel between limited, campfire locations. Yeah, it's good. It's not great, and I was kind of hoping to be great.
Yeah.
It looked great.
Yeah.
And it just, as a Metroid and Metroidvania fan, it's pretty good. But it's not... it's not a Game of the Year idea.
No.
And I don't know, I kind of was hoping it would be.
Yeah.
And,
I think the concept behind the game could be.
Yeah.
If the game itself were executed well. I just wrote an editorial over the weekend about, games growing up and appealing to people beyond our group of people who keep buying games. And I talked about how, how many more games are we going to play where it's some super soldier in a dangerous land? We need more games like this, but we need games like this that are executed to the same level as those super soldier in a dangerous land games. And we just aren't getting them. A lot of times when you have concepts like this, they're handed to a small studio, a small team, or they're indie games. This game is published by EA. And while I do admire EA for having this little label where it releases like smaller indie-ish games, it's like, what is it doing? Like, why does EA do that? Like, I don't understand why it has its EA Originals thing.
Not sure.
It's like they're trying to maintain street cred in some way or something.
I mean, it's not like they're releasing anything else.
I mean, you're right. I mean, EA at this point is really all about releasing a couple games and just making money from the games as a service angle of its games. This game, I'm glad that EA made this because otherwise maybe it isn't made at all. But I do wonder, like, why?
I don't know.
And if you're going to do it, why not give them a budget big enough to make the idea really come to life? Because I feel like there's a lot of cut corners in this game.
Most of the EA originals seem to pick up games that are already done.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't sound like they really get involved in the development funding.
It doesn't sound like it. Yeah.
They just pick up stuff.
Yep. They probably have some guy there that goes to all the indie events and like tries to find things that are interesting.
It's better than having them fall by the wayside, but sometimes you end up with something like Immortals of Avium, which
right.
kind of like
no, you're right.
turned out to be not great for that studio.
Yeah.
You could argue that it would have been worse maybe if EA hadn't helped them, but I don't know.
It is an interesting question of, is it better to have ideas like this finished and released in a not perfect state, or is it better to not do them at all unless you're going to give them the budget and the attention that they deserve, I guess is what I'm getting at. So, here's the thing. I did enjoy playing this game for the most part. To your point, the combat's not bad.
No, it's part of the problem is that we already had
The Lost Crown, Prince of Persia earlier,
which I think does a lot of what this does better.
I agree.
And maybe,
I think it's the better game.
Yeah, and maybe it's not fair to compare a Ubisoft production to
it's
an
really not.
indie game.
Yeah. But it is an EA published game.
Yeah.
I mean,
but I don't know how much that really helps it in terms. It feels like an indie movie that got picked up by like Skydance or something.
Right, because Ubisoft Prince of Persia, that's its IP.
It's an in-house game. Yeah. It's different.
It does make a difference for sure.
El Guapo S has the enemy variety, which is a good point. There's like 5 enemies.
It's the worst. Is my biggest complaint with the entire game. You fight the same enemies over
for real. I
I
think there are 6 enemy types aside from the bosses.
Yeah, and there aren't any bosses either. I fought like one boss.
Yeah, and usually the bosses come back later as
really?
Enemies.
There's one.
Not like the big set piece stuff.
I fought the boss to get the spirit. That was like the only boss I fought.
Yeah. There's like the first time you fight that like the big like tank thing. Like that's kind of set up like a boss. It feels
like a mini boss.
It's set up like a boss fight. He's a life bar. That whole thing. But then he becomes a normal enemy.
Right. That you just fight all the time. Yeah. So yeah, enemy variety's awful. There aren't hardly any boss fights in the game. And to Matt's point, he's played it more than me. They repeat, which is crazy. So yeah, that is to me is the biggest deficit in the game is the lack of enemy variety. I don't know why it is that way. Maybe they're trying to keep it true to reality and like there's just certain types of warriors in that tribe. I don't know
about that.
Honestly.
I mean, some of it is just I think you really do have a limited amount of things you can do as the character. So you want to you can only
It's very simple. You have a heavy attack, a light attack, and then you can squeeze the left trigger, and that lets you aim, and then the right trigger fires your projectiles. And that's pretty much the bulk of the game's controls.
Yeah, I think some of it is just like, each enemy has a specific ability or specific thing that's a challenge in how you fight them, and eventually you kind of run out of what you can do with his abilities. There's like the warrior, the melee guys who come up and fight you. There's the guys who shoot stuff at you. There's the guy with a shield that you can't really get through immediately. There's the flying guys that are hard to reach, so you have to use the moon mask most of the time.
Yep.
And like you're kind of out of ideas pretty soon after those.
Yeah. I wanted this game so bad for this game to be awesome. Like
also,
I'm like you. I really hoped it was going to be like a game of the year contender.
Also, it does a very bad job of explaining that those skill trees are there and what your thing does. And I think I was at the first Great Spirit boss before I realized I had skill points to spend on a tree.
Oh, really?
So I was playing an unupgraded character for most of the
wow.
time.
That's crazy. Well, the skill trees are pretty simple. There's one for each mask, and I think they have, 10 upgrades in each one, roughly?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Yeah, I think
around
9
there.
or 10.
Yeah. So there's like 20 total upgrades or roughly that you can get. That's not really a big part of the game.
And 2 of them are like for your super modes. Like there's super abilities that I constantly forget I have.
Mm-hmm.
Like the Moon Mask can shoot like this really powerful like Cyclops style laser.
Yeah, you click both sticks. Yeah.
And then the Sun Mask can basically do a supernova.
And that's like Y and left sticker. It's weird. That one.
It's the same.
Oh, it is?
It's just, yeah.
Oh, you just have to have the other mask equipped.
Yeah.
But then there's another special attack that is like the Y and click left stick or something. I thought there was. Maybe I'm confusing 2 games. I'm mixing 2 games up. That happens when you play like 5 games in a week. Features of one start bleeding over into the other one in your mind. But you're right. The skill trees are small, but there's also those things called trinkets that you can equip. But yet, you can only equip those at like at the workbenches, which is a little weird.
Makes you wonder what you're doing with them.
Exactly. Yeah.
Just strapping them to your chest or something.
Yeah. And you talked about the challenges. Those, to me, kind of ruin the game. They're so hard.
They're very hard, and like they're hard to the point that you start to wonder, like, do I not have the ability I need for this yet?
No, they're just that hard.
But it seems like they're really just, I don't know. There's one I just couldn't do, and I don't know if it's because I didn't have the right ability yet, or if I was just not good enough at it, but it really felt impossible.
Yeah. And as Matt mentioned, you click both sticks to perform your super moves, and it is crazy, like this huge beam that shoots out and just fries pretty much every enemy on the plane. And that's satisfying to perform and pull off for sure. One thing I don't like about this game too is that it's one of those games that has random falling crap where like you run and stuff just falls from the ceiling. That is one of my biggest pet peeves in video games is falling crap where you just can't guess when it's going to fall. And it's just like luck whether you run underneath it or not. Like there's a couple sections in this game that were like that. And I was like, that's annoying.
I mean, it is very on a very regular timer, but the first time you get there, you don't always know that's
I got hit.
Happen.
Yeah. Yep. And again, it's not many boss fights, not many mini boss fights at all. But here's the thing, Matt, to me. This game, there's the skill trees, by the way, if you want to see them. This game has a great vibe about it. I don't know if that's even the right word to use. I have a good feeling while I'm playing this game. I don't understand where it's coming from or why, but I don't know. The audio in this game is also really, really good. The sounds of the attacks, the special moves, just the jumping and the platforming, it gets me excited while I'm playing it. And I don't think that comes through. Like if you're watching this B-roll in the show right now and you can't hear the audio of the game, I think not hearing the audio in this game really sells it short. Because it's like you watch this, you're like, oh, it's just another Metroidvania, you're kind of plodding along. The audio of this game, the way they've designed the sound for it, brings a lot of energy to the combat in the game in general. And there aren't many games that are like that anymore, sadly. So, I don't know. I feel like watching B-roll of this doesn't really portray the game, what the vibe is like of actually playing the game. There's like a much bigger sense of urgency and a lot more excitement while playing it than I get than just watching footage of the game itself.
It's interesting that you use the Moon Mask so much.
Yeah.
I switched to the Sun Mask and pretty much never go back unless I have to.
Well, it's like you can use the projectiles with the Moon Mask.
So it's run out of ammo.
Yeah.
I hate running out of ammo.
Well, it's an active reload like Gears of War.
Eventually, when you realize there's a skill tree.
Yeah.
But even that I didn't really like because like the timing on that is so weird and it jumps around with the character, so I can't follow.
Yeah,
It's
a little
annoying.
weird. It's not as easy to use as in Gears of War.
Yeah, I just switched to the Sun Mask. I just beat the shit out of things with
I use
swords.
projectiles because I can keep them away from me. And then once I realized I was going to do that, I started using that tree instead of using the Sun Mask tree.
Now, I've gone almost all the way down the Sun tree.
Yeah,
because it's I hit, bounce up. Once you get that extra hit in there in the light combo. Like, oh, nobody touches
you. You can usually kill the enemies with one combo.
Yeah.
One melee combo.
Once you have that, once you have the Sun Mask upgraded for those things, and then you can get the, actually the more important upgrade on the Moon Mask for me was the reflecting projectile thing.
Oh.
Because now I can't get hit by projectiles. I just bounce it back, and that takes care of them, and then I can just fight the guys on the ground.
Well, one thing this has demonstrated is that clearly you can choose to play the game in a couple of different ways if you want to, which is good. So depending on what you like to play, how you like to play, you can kind of shape that enough in this game to play it how you want to. Which doesn't happen in every Metroidvania or every Metroid clone, as it were. How much would you pay for this game, Matt?
How much did I pay for it?
I don't know. I got a code from EA. I don't know how much it costs. I should have checked.
I can't remember how much it was.
I would pay $30 for it. Maybe 35.
That would be more like 20.
Oh, really?
But I can't remember what I did pay for it.
I wanted this game to be good. I wanted this game to be a Game of the Year contender because I want more games like this that I've talked about this before. like games that explore other cultures, things that we haven't done a billion times. Not another bald space marine with a chain gun. But unfortunately, again, a lot of the games that are like this that have these new ideas, they just don't put the budget behind them or the resources behind them to make them good enough in all the other ways to make them Game of the Year contenders. And I really hope that that's something that starts to change over time in our industry. Ideas like this getting bigger budgets so that they're not just kind of cordoned off in these indie spaces where a lot of casual folks will never even know that they exist.
It is, in fact, $20.
It is $20. Well, that's good then. If it's only $20, go buy it. Like, I only basically finished a third of the game. I already feel like I got $20 out of it.
Yeah. I mean, I've paid $20 for way worse things.
Yeah, so they priced this perfect, honestly, which I didn't know. So that's great to hear.
Even doubly surprising from EA.
Yeah, I mean, I said I would pay $30 or $35 for it, and you're getting it for way less than that.
Yeah, you blew it, EA.
You could have got more out of me. Would you be comfortable paying that? $20?
Yeah, I did. So I guess so.
And I think what you also, we always say bet with your money. Like, this is a small bet, and so if you also want to see new ideas in games, new settings for games, also this taps into emotions that a lot of games don't. Like, I lost my dad. And I played God of War Ragnarok, and the father and son stuff in that really hit me hard. Like, if somebody just lost their father and they play this, there's some moments where even, I'm years removed from my father dying, and there were still a couple moments where I got a little misty-eyed playing this. So, and also the voice actor in this that plays him, I think he legitimately cries in a couple of the reads. So I don't know if it is the guy, because remember the guy that showed it off for the first time at the press conference? He said, my father died, and I've been struggling with it.
Like I said, their voice actors have had their fathers die too, so he might just be
channeling that,
or he might just be a good actor.
That's true. Yeah.
Obviously, my feelings about my father dying are different than most people, so that didn't really
hit you
have a lot of impact on me. But I recognize the sincerity of it, and it's not like I sociopathically don't understand how that is. Not. Yeah. But and it does feel like a very sincere treatment of that subject.
Agreed.
Which is impressive.
Yep. So anyway, there you go. That's Tales of Kenzera Zhao. Zhao is the name of the main character.
Yeah.
If they do make a sequel, I'm assuming it's going to be Tales of Kenzera, some other new warrior or shaman.
Yeah, like somebody else.
Because that's, I guess, the one thing I would say is even though this story did touch me, I didn't particularly resonate with the main character all that much. And I think that's the way that they handled him in the game. I don't feel like they personify him well enough. Well, he's kind of like the punk kid. Like he hates all the traditions. Like they kind of try to make him unlikable in some ways.
A little bit, but it's more because early on it's because he's focused on bringing his father back.
Yeah.
And kind of part of the deal is over the course of the game he begins to because early on he's very insistent to the god of death that it is I'm doing this for my father. And over the course of the game, as he starts to have to do the things that are required to do that, he starts to realize that he's doing it for himself.
That is kind of the story.
And, his father is really not a part of the equation when it comes down to it. And the God of Death knows that.
Right, all along.
That's sort of why he's on the journey with him. Because one of the things about, Western mythology does tend to personify death as evil or sinister. And a lot of mythologies do not.
No, you're right.
This is clearly one of the ones that more portrays him as a teacher.
Pharaoh Doll says he actually did voice Zhao.
Okay.
I knew it. I knew it was real, man. I could tell because I've been through it.
I know it's real. I'm just saying other people have lost a father.
No, I hear you, but I could there was something about it. I was like, that sounds real to me. Like that's real grief. And I ended up being right. So thank you, Pharaoh Doll.
But so I don't know because mine was in Kiswahili.
Yeah. So, that's true.
And I don't think that's the same. Or maybe it is the same
not.
guy. I don't know. I don't know.
They may have changed it though. You're right. Because who knows if he can speak his native tongue well enough to voice a game. So
the voice acting is still good. Although the little girl you chase early on seems to be someone just doing a very high pitched voice, like an adult actor doing a high pitched voice, and it's a little grating.
There are shortcomings in the game. There's no doubt about it. Yeah. But also, I think we've laid them all out for you guys.
But also, it's kind of a fairy tale as well. It's a myth, so it isn't a problem that it's over the top in places in that regard. So I don't know. It's a matter of taste.
Swanland says it's also on PlayStation Plus. Now you're saying is on PlayStation Plus if you subscribe at the higher tiers,
Yeah,
not the one that most of us have.
Yeah, if you're a special plus.
Yeah, but also though, this month, if you're just a normal Joe Blow PlayStation Plus subscriber, it's a great month for free games. There's like 4 bangers if you are a PlayStation Plus subscriber. This is not one of them, unfortunately. So,
I guess he does sound like Bayek, because this is the voice of Bayek.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, that's a good point. So there you go. That's Tales of Kenzera.
Bayek
Zhao
loses his kid. This guy loses his father. Like,
right.
His voice actor definitely specializes in characters that have lost family.
Yeah. It's not without its faults, and I think we laid out most of the faults here for you. But for $20, like both Matt and I agree, it's worth the $20.
And as a first game, like, you know, like, this is
hopefully they get another chance.
This is not an easy thing to put together. Certainly, I would imagine this genre is not an easy starting point.
Yep.
So, in that regard, it's an admirable achievement.
Agreed.
And I hope he gets to make more.
Yep, me too. And if you go buy the game, he will. All right, let's move on.
I'd love to see him get something with a bigger budget to do like a more of a, you know, full size, more of an action RPG approach to some kind of, because there's definitely some Afrofuturism in there, especially in the framing device with the kid.
Oh yeah.
There's some Wakanda happening there, and I'd love to see that part of it explored too.
Yeah,
like,
agreed.
'cause that's very cool.
Yep.
That just doesn't exist in games for the most part.
We need more stuff like this.
Yeah,
a lot more. Okay, we're gonna move on to the game that I teased in the open that I believe will be in the discussion for Game of the Year with some folks.
No, we're not.
Oh, we're not?
Not unless you like this one a lot more than I do.
Oh, I don't. No, I do not. You're right, man. I could have just read the lower third, of course, but I didn't. I had that part of the show right. So we actually are not going to talk about the game that I think will be in Game of the Year discussion. Instead, we're going to talk about a game that definitely will not be in Game of the Year discussion.
Not even the Game of the Week discussion.
Yeah, really. And that's a good way to put it. And that is Endless Ocean Luminous. Now, Matt, the first thing I'll say is that this game is getting horrible reviews. It's getting like 3s and 4s. And so the first thing I'm going to say is that I believe it's better than that.
It is. The thing I will say...
I can understand why it got those scores.
Yeah, the thing I will say is I think if you are familiar with the series, I understand the temptation to rank it lower.
Yeah.
Because this may be the laziest thing Nintendo's ever made.
It's the first Nintendo first-party game to get a 3 or a 4, and I don't know how
I'm a big fan of this series of the Endless Ocean. I like the Everblue games that were on PlayStation before them. I love Aquanaut's Holiday. Like, all the diving, looking at fish games are my jam. This game is awful. Awful.
Like, I still enjoyed it somehow.
I enjoyed some of the diving.
I like to admit it.
I like that there's prehistoric animals in it. Like, you can find like all these like extinct.
We should explain
reptiles.
what it is for people who aren't our age.
Oh, you're diving.
Yeah,
it's a scuba diving.
It's a scuba diving game.
Except, like, here's the thing: every single game that precedes this in the series, both Endless Ocean and Everblue, are vastly more involved games than this.
Yeah.
They have stories, they have equipment, they have things you find. You go back up to a boat, you choose where to dive, you choose where to go. There's a coherent world that you're going from this part of the sea to the other. There are ecosystems to see. None of that is in this game. None of it.
Basically, you're a scuba diver, and there's a coral that's dying. And so you need to go and take pictures and collect fish.
You have to scan fish to get light bacteria off them and collect it, because the more light bacteria you collect, the healthier the world coral gets.
This coral that you're seeing right now, the objective of the game is to save this coral.
By the way,
basically.
This Sarah is your AI, which, as far as I can tell, is actually voiced by an AI.
Yeah, it sounds like it.
And then everyone else in the game has no voice acting. They just make bubble sounds.
Yeah.
And you get text.
Because eventually you run into people underwater, but you can't talk underwater.
Well, they can, but you can't. For some reason, they can talk to you through their scuba masks, but you can't. And it's just awful.
The decisions that have been made with this game are insane.
This is the worst story mode I think I've ever played.
Because you can't play it.
There's nothing.
You can't play it also. So you complete, like, the training missions.
Yeah, it's like goes chapter 1, 1, 1, 1, 2, 1, 3, and each one, like, they're like 3 minutes long, and they teach you how, like, the analog stick works. Yeah. And then to open the next thing, they're like, scan 500 fish. And I'm like, what?
Yeah. So you
scan
finish
500 fish? And it turns out that usually you scan things in this series one at a time.
Yeah.
In this, they gave you a scanner shotgun.
Yeah.
And you can just scan everything
Spreads.
in front of you.
Yeah.
And so scanning 500 fish takes like 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Like because they're just scanning whole schools of fish. And then you go back and you can do more. And by the time you go back from the dives you've done to unlock the story, the things they're teaching you are things you've already figured out
on your own.
Because you have to actually play the game. And then you eventually get to this point where they're like, to open the next chapter, scan 5,000 fish or scan 7,000 fish. And I'm like, what? Fuck you! And just playing the game.
What you talking about, Willis?
Playing the game normally in solo, you do eventually get all that because I did some of these dives. So it's like procedurally generated areas, which seem to just be made up of the same 10 things placed together over and over again. And you go in after so my first solo dive. At the end of it, it took 2 hours, and I had scanned over half the fish in the game.
Oh, really?
And I had 5,000 something scans, so I got to go through more of the story, and then I need to go back and do another. And by the end of those 2 dives, I had 80 some fish left to find in the whole game.
The whole game.
Out of 578 or something like that. And that was mine. So now all it is going in these things and hoping you find one of the few fish. And I'm like, I don't really want to do that. And I got to the chapter 5 is the final chapter of the story, and to unlock that. So at the very beginning of the story, you find this stupid tablet, this ancient tablet, which has a grid on it.
Yeah,
it's 199. It's 99 grid things.
Yeah, and
every time you find a certain discovery or do an achievement in the game, it makes one of those grid boxes glow. Mm-hmm. To unlock Chapter 5, you have to unlock all 99 squares on the grid, which is 100 hours of playtime. I'm like, no! To unlock the worst story mode I've ever... I can't.
It's insane. It's insane.
It's terrible.
Who gates the story mode?
I don't know.
It's insane. You can't play the story mode unless you go scan all the fish.
And then a ton of the assets in this game are recycled from one of Eureka's mobile games that never came here, which is called Fishy Fish or some shit like that.
Of course it is.
I'll tell you, man, I desperately wish this had just been a remaster of the previous 2 Endless Ocean games. I would
put them together in one package.
Because the biggest problem with Endless Ocean 2 is that it's on the Wii and it looks like shit.
Yeah.
If you just upgraded that to, even if you just use the recycled assets here
from the mobile game,
which looks way better than the Wii game, I would have been way happier with that. Because there's an actual game there. There's oxygen limits. You have to upgrade your gear. You have to get
your
better
tank
stuff
never
to
runs
dive
out
deeper.
in this game. You can dive as long as you want.
It matters how deep you are. There's a sense of progression and kind of diving expertise happening, and a story that's you're looking for these artifacts.
Yeah.
There's nothing in this. It's nothing. It's the most mindless garbage. And I love mindless fish scanning, but that's too mindless. And you hold the L trigger, the L bumper to scan the thing, and it's just okay, and then it just keeps scanning, and you didn't realize. By the way, because you're scanning you have to scan all the fish. You can't just scan the one halibut.
Yeah.
You have to scan all the halibuts because otherwise you can't unlock anything.
Yeah.
And it's just ridiculous. And it's early on, I'm just holding the button, and whether you let the button go or hold it all the way, you still have to zoom in on the fish and do that. And eventually I realized if you hit the B button, you cancel the scan.
Yeah.
So you just hold the button, cancel the scan, hold the button, cancel the scan, hold the button, cancel the scan,
hold the button, quickly adds them, yeah.
And you just scan.
Because you'll scan a school of fish and it'll have the names of the fish grayed out until you move the cursor down on them, and then it'll reveal what the actual fish is.
And the main thing, there's little things some of the creatures you can have them follow you, and there's some I hesitate to call them puzzles, but you'll find a ruin that says bring a sailfish here, man. So go find a sailfish, have it follow you, bring it there if you can get it to follow you, because that is a very sketchy thing.
Yeah,
they just
not get it
half
to work.
The time they just disappear.
Yeah.
They don't even follow you. And the other thing that can happen is if you find anomaly fish that if you scan 9 of them, an unknown marine creature shows up, and it's it's a giant horse.
Yeah, the one I found was a seahorse.
There was a giant seal that wore crowns. There's a seal, it was a harp seal the size of a whale that wore clothing.
Yeah,
or extinct creatures or things It's very weird, and that's the kind of the thing is there's no biomes, there's no ecology beyond kind of what the different individual procedurally generated areas. So at one point I'm just playing this thing, and I swim down and I found plesiosaurs and mosasaurs and ancient, and I'm like,
dinosaurs,
and no one fucking cares. Like, there's no reaction to it. It's like, I just found a fucking Tylosaurus and no one reacted to it.
Well, there you can see. So, yeah, you can scan like a bunch of fish all at once. And then you can see the question marks on the left-hand side there. If you just go down, eventually they fill in.
That. It doesn't tell you that
I know.
early on. And then eventually, you're trying to get the one fish that you're trying to scan. Like, how do I get this in a giant ball of fish? How do I get... And eventually, at some point, it was like, it marked one. I'm like, oh, why would it mark that if I can't... You son of... Like, I just spent 10 minutes trying to, finagle one fish out of the way to scan that one because the one I needed to identify. And then I'm like, oh, you just scroll through the whole thing. And then it makes it even more, by rote. It's even less...
This is one of the objectives. You have to find special fish that emit this, bio whatever. And you have, a little scanner that vibrates when you get close to them.
Yeah, they're basically glitches in the Matrix.
Yeah.
And then if you look at the map, it will actually show you, vague circles. If you the map, early on, you're like, oh, my God. You swim around for, 10 minutes, 3% of the map uncovered. And you're like, oh, my God. But you know what? By the end of some of these dives, I did have all the map uncovered.
Yeah.
It was just because you go everywhere to find all the damn fish.
Yep. And people are probably sitting there wondering, how in the hell? Didn't Shane say when we started talking about this that he enjoyed playing this? I did enjoy playing this. And what I enjoyed about it is that, kind of like Tales of Kenzera, it is just completely off the map different from anything else being released right now. And I found joy in just putting around under the water, looking for fish. I started joining online sessions with other people and putting around with them. There's this whole system where you can tag things. So if you find something that's rare or a fish that's rare, you can tag it, and then it helps other people find it. And I found it therapeutic almost playing this. I don't know.
I mean, that's one of the reasons I like these kind of fish scanning games, is I do find it relaxing. But the problem with this is that it's been done so much better
before.
If you haven't played the other games, then you might be a little less judgmental about this one. But this is,
I mean, don't get me wrong,
unconscionable.
The game is bad. The fact that they gate the story mode and make you go play these other modes to scan fish before you can make headway in the story mode is insane. It is completely insane.
Yeah.
But I still was entertained swimming around, bless you, scubaing around under the water with other people and doing the emotes and finding a fish that I hadn't found because they had marked it and I saw it on the map and went there. One thing you can do too when you're playing online with other people is you can go to the list of people that are in the server and you can go to them immediately. You can basically just fast travel to wherever they are. And I found that also very helpful because you don't have to swim manually all the way across the map. You just click the button.
I don't know what that is. Creature dive capacity. What does that mean?
Does that mean you can only scan so many per
dive?
I've
scanned literally thousands. But I don't know what that is.
I don't either.
My creature dive capacity is 14, and I don't know what it means.
Yep. I mean, basically what we're looking at here is a game that you get once every 12 or 15 years, and it's not one of the better ones in that subgenre.
No, it's the worst
fish
of
them all.
game I've ever played.
But
I've played some fish scanning games in my time.
I still found entertainment and enjoyment out of this. It was
the worst day of fish scanning is still better than the best day working, as they say.
I would play this late at night after I was winding down from working all day, or playing other action-y games that got my heart rate up and blah blah blah. I found this to be a nice little respite at the end of the day to just kind of swim around and find fish and interact with the other people doing the same thing. There's no sense of urgency. Your tank never runs out of air. Some of this stuff maybe is better without having it, but most of it, no. It needs those other things. But the first time I swam with the blue whale, my heart got bumping and racing. Discovering some of the bigger creatures in the game has an allure to it for sure. Or getting next to the blue whale and having it basically sing its song as you're swimming alongside it and coming through my surround sound system. It literally almost shook our apartment with the sound of the whale. So the game has its moments, but there's so many fundamental things that it gets wrong. It's I would recommend people buy this for $10.
Yeah, that's about what it's worth.
If you watch it,
it's a mobile game,
and, right? And you're I could see where I would enjoy spending time doing this.
Yeah,
$10.
Or go find a copy of Endless Ocean 2 and play it on Dolphin.
Yeah,
that's the best. The two best games in this sort of subgenre are Endless Ocean 2 and Aquanauts Holiday 3, which is on PS3. Unfortunately, the only English version of Aquanauts Holiday 3 is from South Korea and costs a ridiculous amount of money now. but it is a lot of fun. Unfortunately, the problem is both of those games don't look very good.
Yeah.
And visuals are kind of important to this because it's sort of, the meditative escape sort of relies on that.
The fish got to look good.
Yeah.
That's all there is to it. Yeah.
And they look okay here.
Yeah.
Some of them look better than others.
Yeah.
You can tell with some of the recycled assets. And there's a lot of reuse because there's normal versions and there's like rare versions. This one's red. It's just like, okay, this is still the same fish though. Like we're not right.
I would argue too, if you have kids that are into zoology. So when I was a kid, I thought I was going to be a zoologist. I was like, going to science field days and competing at science and stuff like that. And a lot of that was like identifying birds, identifying trees. I could literally, at that point in my life, I could name thousands of birds on site. Just from flashcard work, just flashcards over and over, training for a science field day. If you have kids in your family that are like that, they're telling you like, I'm going to be a zoologist one day. They love animals. They love dinosaurs. Get this game. Kids will love this because you learn what the real fish are. Like the fish look good enough.
Yeah, you can tell. I admit that like I can ID actual fish now because
of these games. Yeah.
Even in this game, I was like, oh, that's a humphead wrasse.
Yeah.
Oh, that's some kind of salmon. It's like,
it does. It actually works to teach kids. So, and again,
I know all the sharks.
Yeah.
There's a lot of sharks.
There's no cooperative in this, though, is there? Where you can play side by side with like your kids.
On a couch co-op?
Yeah.
No,
I don't think there is. It's only online. So to play online with your kids, you'd have to get another copy and play like upstairs or whatever with them. Or you can just sit along shotgun while they play.
Which is 100% what Nintendo would like you to do.
Yeah. But it's also very simple. Like your kids aren't going to need you to hold their hand while they play this. For them to learn about like all the fish and everything in it. It's very simple. It's very easy. The rules aren't complicated. And best of all, like again, it's just like free play. You just go down in the water. There's no rush to go back up.
There's honestly very little game here.
There really is. That's a good way to put it. Yeah.
It's a toy.
It is kind of a toy that you fiddle around with, or like a living encyclopedia of sea
and there's
life.
nothing necessarily wrong with that, except for the fact that they've done it so much better before.
Yeah.
And like that idea of like kind of the free dive, go do whatever you want stuff, that's always been an option or a mode in these games.
Yep.
But there was also way more to do. The story mode was involved. The story mode had upgrading.
A story.
And yeah, but it felt like a video game,
Yeah.
And like when you finally got the diving equipment you needed to go down and see like the sharks way down at the bottom of that hole, it was really cool.
Yeah.
Like it felt like you
It
did
was a payoff for the work to get the new gear. Yeah, there's none of that in this.
And this one early in the trailers, I was like, oh wow, you're gonna get to see like mosasaurs and ichthyosaurs and like some of these like and mythical creatures, the sea serpents and Elasmosaurus and stuff, and like. Seeing them is nothing. I mean, it's cool to see them in the game, but it just show up.
Yeah.
You get there's like there's one area that shows up in a bunch of the procedurally generated things. It's a bunch of ruins, and all the creatures there are extinct prehistoric animals. Yeah, and that's it. You scan 14 variations of the Ichthyosaurus body type and 14 versions of the plesiosaur. Yeah. A lot of those the fish, the Precambrian fish with the bone
crazy
helmets.
jaws. Yeah.
Dunkleostis or whatever. There's a lot of those. There's little ones, big ones, but like that's about it. And like there's like a couple scary like ancient sharks like Megalodon and like
there's some in the footage there.
There's some in like you see. But the thing is, they're just everywhere.
Yeah,
there's nothing special about them.
There is a moment though in this game where you see like a shadow off in the distance, like a murky shadow, and then as it comes into view, there's that reveal moment that gives me a little
once
something.
in a while, like you'll be scanning stuff down on the floor, seabed, and you'll hear like and you look up and there's the fucking blue whale like going right over you,
cruising right over. Yeah, it has moments like that. Yeah,
but also again, those moments existed in the old games, and they were much better.
What were they thinking with this game?
I mean, it's just like this is the cheapest possible kind of test bed for this kind of thing. I mean, maybe if this thing does well, they'll do a more robust one later. Because Eureka just periodically does these games. And Nintendo owns the series. Endless Ocean is a Nintendo series.
Property, yep. So, Vincent says, worst Nintendo published Switch game. This or Everybody Want to Switch?
You know what? I think Everybody Want to Switch had more ambition.
It's a better game.
It is a better game for what it's trying to do.
It is. I hate to admit it.
That's the thing is like as dumb motion control minigame collections go, I think Everybody Want to Switch is a more successful one of those than this is a fish scanning
but I will admit,
simulator.
I would rather play Endless Ocean Luminous than play Everybody Want to Switch.
Probably, but just like
Everybody Want to Switch was just annoying.
Well, but partly because I don't like subgenre
Right.
1-2 Switch is part of. I don't like any
the
of those
motion controlled mini game subgenre.
I don't like any of the games like that, let alone everybody 1-2 Switch. It's no snipper clips, I'll tell you that.
WarioWare wins over this game for sure, but not everybody 1-2 Switch, definitely not. So there you go. That's Endless Ocean Luminous. It is a Switch exclusive. I would only pay $10 for it. If it costs more than that, keep on walking. But I do think
I would give them a dead fish for it,
which is about $10.
That's about it.
But I do think that this is a good way to.
But I didn't. I paid full price for it. That's why I'm doubly irritated.
How much was it?
I was like 50.
40
or 50. I don't remember.
I'm sorry, Matt. I'm sorry.
I almost bought.
You were excited about this game too.
This is my second most anticipated game. I didn't realize how badly they were going to biff it.
Yeah. And they did biff it
because I was assuming it was going to be like two. I thought it was going to be an actual video game.
Yeah.
And it was not. I mean, I'm sure part of that is they put all the funds and all the time and effort into the multiplayer thing, which is the last thing I wanted out of this. Yeah. So, oh well.
Yep. But again, if you see it in a dusty bin here in 3 or 4 years for $10, pick it up. Particularly if you have kids. This is a great camouflage for learning.
I don't think you will though, because this thing seems pretty hard to find physical copies.
So you're saying you might want to buy it and not open it?
You might want to buy it and keep it sealed.
You may be right. This might be one of those games that
doesn't look like they made too many of these.
Yeah,
physically.
and nobody's gonna buy it, so.
Yeah, so sometimes it's hard to gauge that, because sometimes the rare games become rare and valuable no matter what. Sometimes they're only valuable because they're good.
Yeah. A lot of times the worst games are the ones that end up being worth the most money, though.
I mean, yeah. Do you have a Devil's Third situation here, or a Cubivore situation?
Yeah.
Because Cubivore is valuable not just because they only made a few thousand of it, because it's a good game.
It's also a crazy game.
Yeah.
There's no other game like it. So there you go. That's Endless Ocean Luminous for Switch. Matt and I both say that's a hard pass, except in the case of very specific situations.
Yeah, certainly a pass for the launch price.
Yep. And now it's time to talk about a game that I hinted at that might be on people's Game of the Year list later on in the year. That game is INDIKA. You may remember that it was our New York Sneaker Society Sneaker of the Week a month ago. This has been on my radar. I could see this game coming. When I watch a video game trailer and I have no idea what's going on, that's when something piques my interest. That's when I'm like, okay, I need to start watching this. And then I started paying attention to it, and I learned what the basic concept of it was, and I was like, okay, that sounds freaking crazy and awesome. I'm going to play it when it comes out, and that's exactly what I did. I played INDIKA. It is let me get the B-roll rolling here, because it will tell the tale far better than almost anything that I can say to you about the game. So it is, I think most people, when they look at the game outwardly, they would say that it's a narrative-driven adventure game. And it is. It is mostly driven by story. However, it's not really your typical adventure game where it's like, hey, I get this object here, I take it over there. Or it's mostly with conversations and things like that. There are not a ton of conversations in this game at all. This game is about a nun in an alternate history 19th century Russia who lives in a covenant with a bunch of other nuns. And she has basically been shunned. Everybody at the convent hates her. She tries to perform rituals with them, and they basically make fun of her. They make her do chores, and, you'll see in the B-roll here in a minute, they make her do a chore. They're like, hey, fill up this barrel with water. And as the player of the game, you have to keep going back and forth from this well to this barrel, delivering water. And it gets annoying. You're like, man, I feel like I'm doing work.
Do the dishes, Cinderella. Do the dishes.
Yeah, that's kind of what it is, actually. And so you finally fill up the barrel with water. The sister comes out and kicks the barrel over. That's what it's like for INDIKA. That's the name of the nun.
It sounds like living in Russia.
Kind of. Yeah, actually, yeah. You're not too far off with that. And so basically everyone in the convent hates her. She can't figure it out, but she's very frustrated by it. She's also having issues with her faith. She's...
I can't imagine why.
And that's why. And that's why they show some of these scenes at the beginning, to show you why she's questioning her faith. And eventually she gets pushed around, and she gets a communion one day, and she basically hallucinates in communion. You'll see again in the B-roll here in a minute. And this crazy stuff starts happening during communion. This little dude comes out of one of the head nun's mouths. I know, it's crazy. And he runs down her arm just as she's about to give INDIKA communion, and she freaks out. And the other nuns are like, what is going on? Why does she keep freaking out while we're doing communion or we're praying or whatever? They kind of like quarantine her and put her alone in, I wouldn't say it's a prison, but like in this room, and you're seeing that now. And eventually they come to her and they're like, hey, we need an errand run. You need to take this letter to this monastery, to this monk. And so they basically set her out into the wilderness in the dead of winter with just her nun garb on and a little knapsack with a letter to deliver to this monastery. And she starts going through the tundra. It is literally just snowing and freezing, and she has just her nun outfit on, trying to deliver this letter. And eventually she comes upon a train wreck, literally a train wreck, a train that is wrecked. And she comes across this group of people, and they're crazy. Like, one guy tries to shoot her, but he's a terrible shot. She ends up running into kind of the leader of the whole thing. And he's like, yeah, we had a train full of criminals, and the train crashed, and, like, everybody's dead, or blah, blah, blah. And what happens is one of the criminals comes out from nowhere and basically takes a gun and starts shooting at the other people. And you become, for whatever reason, INDIKA is like, okay, like, we're together, and they join up, and they get on this crazy, like, steam-powered motorcycle. I know this is getting crazy, but just follow with me here. They get on this steam-powered motorcycle, and they go on this journey together. And this game, the whole game, there's narration in INDIKA's head. And at first, it seems like the game is just the game's narrator, but eventually you realize that it's this manifestation in her mind of the devil. And so basically, INDIKA goes on this road trip with this convict and the devil in her head to deliver this letter. And everything from there just kind of unravels and goes crazy. Now, if you haven't figured it out by now, this game questions religion. So if you are uncomfortable with something like that, you don't like your faith questioned, that's what this game is all about. This entire game is about INDIKA questioning her religious faith. And what she believes evil is, or what evil isn't, what makes an evil person evil, or what makes somebody a good person. All of this is like jumbled in her mind, and her journey of self-discovery is her trying to figure out what the truth is, so to speak. And it just gets insane. So there's the thing too is like, if you watch this game or you watch this B-roll, you're like, oh, Shane, it's a puzzle platformer. That's mostly what it is. Or it's just a walking simulator adventure game. But it's not. There's crazy, varied gameplay in this game. So here's the scene I was talking about, where she's getting communion, and she just starts hallucinating this crazy crap happening. And immediately she's like, oh my God, what's going on? And then the other nuns are like, what the hell? What's wrong with her? And this is where they put her and lock her down and realize, you know what? Let's get her out of here and send her on this quest to deliver this letter. So I don't know if you've noticed yet, Matt, in this B-roll, this game that goes out of its way to gamify. Have you noticed it?
Yeah.
Like, there's little things popping up. Like, it goes to a screen that looks like a skill tree screen. It's really not. It's really there for show. And what those are virtues. It's a virtue tree. So, like, all these emotions that she has throughout the game, like, she'll accomplish something in the game, it will go to that skill tree, that virtue tree, and it will show you how what just happened to her relates to that tree. And it will say, like, oh, you get a multiplier for blah, blah, blah if you enact, and none of that matters. It's all just for show. And I'll be honest with you, Matt, I still haven't figured out, and I finished the game, why that is. Why they go out of their way to gamify this. So you'll see, like, there's certain scenes where she'll just light a candle, like at an effigy, and, like, points will come pouring out of the effigy. And it's just like, what? And so
I think it's a comment on, like, kind of the, oh, you were a good person because you did this religious thing sort of thing. Watching it there with, like, what she's doing in her tasks and stuff makes it feel like they're mocking the sort of almost indulgences aspect of kind of Catholicism and how they treat salvation as a transactional thing.
Okay. Now,
that would be my guess, especially knowing what I know about the Russian Orthodox Church.
Okay. Now, the bulk of the gameplay is what you just saw there. It is really a puzzle platformer where you're flipping switches and like platforms are moving. Like, eventually you get into areas, you get into like a fish factory, like a fish gutting factory, and there's like these crazy elevators that you use, and you turn switches and the elevator go halfway up, and then you run around, you get on the boss, get on top of the elevator, jump over there, flip the switch, the elevator goes down half a floor. It's those types of puzzles that are the bulk of the game, but there's also just crazy other stuff in this game that you would never imagine at all. So for example, I already mentioned like the steam motorcycle, like that comes out of nowhere, and it's like this thing that they created for the game that has never really existed, but it's completely believable and plausible. And then there's these other sections of the game where it starts flashing back to INDIKA's childhood, because that's what this is about, is her examining her entire life that has brought her to this crisis of faith, basically. She's trying to figure out why she's a nun, but she's still challenging the things that she's supposed to believe. So there are these flashbacks that go back to her childhood that are 2D, like indie game, like gameplay segments. Like one of them is like you ride the steam bike through this track. Another one is like a side-scrolling platformer section. Another one is this crazy area where there's like a pond and these frogs come up out of the water and you have to like jump on the frog's head. It's almost like Pitfall to get across the marsh. It just keeps throwing these crazy like gamified sections at you. And again, your idea is just as plausible as any of mine were as to why they keep doing this and taking you back. And why they keep having these power-ups like appear above her head and these points adding up and taking you to the skill tree screen and all this stuff. I don't know if it's like to satiate players so they feel like they're comfortable. I don't know why they do it, but this game will catch you off guard consistently. Like you think it settles into a groove. You're like, oh, I've seen everything now. No, you're wrong. Like something crazy will happen that will completely throw you for a loop. There are scenes in this that will test you as a player. So there's one scene where you're walking down a road, and there's a guy walking right in front of you about 40 or 50 feet ahead of you. As you start getting closer to the town, you start to hear screams. And as you get to the town, it's very clear that there is a woman screaming for her life, basically. And the guy in front of you, by the way, has just walked right on by. He hasn't paid attention to it at all. Well, you get to the house where the screaming is coming from, you go in there, and a woman is being raped. And I don't want to spoil it, but there are decisions that need to be made. And you have her, she has her sidekick, the convict that's with her, but it's also the devil in her head telling her that are like basically trying to convince her to follow up on her worst impulses. And some of the stuff that the devil says to her in her head while that scene is happening will shake you. There are several moments in this game that will definitely shake you, unless you're just a sociopath and you don't have any feelings left.
Seems to be a decent companion piece to Hellblade.
Maybe. Because it is a little bit of psychology. You're in her head. You can hear what she's thinking a lot.
Like, it feels like this game maybe exists because of Hellblade.
Possible.
Like, I could see that being an inspiration.
It's possible. As you've probably seen in the B-roll already, it's no technical marvel. But the parts that matter, it
looks pretty good.
It gets right. INDIKA is an incredible character. Like, her facial animations, her voice actor is awesome. Like, some of the more tough scenes to play through in this game, the way the voice actor and her actor handle it are just nail it. You care very quickly about INDIKA in this game. Like, in the first, 10 minutes, you're engaged. Like, as soon as that scene happens where the nuns make her fill and make you, as the player, fill the barrel with water and they just kick it over, you love her immediately. You're done. Signed, sealed, and delivered. You're on INDIKA's team right then. And then it turns into this thing where you're rooting for her throughout the entire game to figure everything out. And you're rooting for yourself to try to figure stuff out as well. So the gameplay variety in this is surprising. There's also these sections, Matt, where her mind starts to break down and she starts to give in to the devil. And the world starts morphing around her. And what she does is she has to pray to make the devil go away. So the world will turn red. Platforms will break apart and sever or whatever. When she starts praying, everything comes back together. And then she'll move forward a little bit. Her prayer can't overcome the devil anymore. The red stuff in the world will morph again. And it becomes, and there's only a few sections of it in the game. They don't do it incessantly so you get tired of it or whatever. But this game just kept me guessing. This is only, I think it took me 5 or 6 hours to finish it. It's not a huge commitment, but through that entire runtime, I just never knew what was going to happen next. It's just one of those games where it just consistently catches you off guard. Another part of it that I thought was really effective is the convict that you pick up and you go on the journey with. He also is having a crisis of faith. There's something about INDIKA that affects him. He said before he met INDIKA, he could talk to God. And the minute that he met her, he could no longer talk to God anymore. And so he wants her to go along with him because now she has become his safety blanket, so to speak. So at a certain point in the game, you get to a crossroads where Ilya, the soldier, needs to go do his thing to make his mind right. And you need to go and deliver the letter to the monastery. And you have to make a choice at that point. And I don't think the game actually allows you to make the choice. I think it's just like, okay, this is what you're going to do. But you end up basically... I don't want to ruin it. I don't want to say what happens there. That's too big of a spoiler. It's hard to talk about this game without spoiling things, as you might imagine. So there's this whole point system. You can't see it right now because it's a cinematic, but normally in the top left corner of the screen, there's these points that add up. And like every time you find something, the points go up. Or if you accomplish something, the points go up. Or if you have an important conversation, the points go up. And you think that it matters because there's like Zeniths are asking you to hit. It'll say 1,300 out of 1,600 or whatever. You're like, oh, what's going to happen when I hit that 1,600? So it convinces you to keep scouring each location, hoping that you find everything to keep the points going up. There's a twist to that at the end of the game that I'm not going to spoil. What else? Again, I don't want to talk about this game too much because it's only 5 or 6 hours long, and I want people who are interested in playing this game to discover a lot of this stuff on their own. My biggest complaints about it is that when you get inside some of the facilities and it really settles into like the puzzle platforming stuff where you're flipping switches and elevators are going up and down and platforms are moving and all that kind of stuff, a lot of times it's really dark and it's really hard to see what's going on. There are like icons on everything that you can interact with, but you have to get within a certain amount of distance before they'll appear. So there is a certain element of kind of fumbling around in the dark in this game in some ways, and that might be intentional as well. That might be an allegory or a metaphor for what's going on with her life, her stumbling around in the dark, trying to figure out who she really is and what religion really means to her. Finally, now in the B-roll, this is the criminal that she ends up going on the road trip with. His name's Ilya, and he has a rotting arm. So he's been a prisoner. He has an arm that like probably should just be chopped off, but he doesn't want to because he's a guitar player. And he knows if he loses his arm, he'll never be able to play guitar again. So he fights against all reason to save the arm. And it's something that INDIKA has to deal with. She has a medical kit. And so she has like antibiotics that she shoots him up with to keep him going, basically. But eventually, the antibiotics run out. And that's when the rubber hits the road. And so he has this rotting arm. The rotting arm becomes like symbolism and allegory for their relationship. As it turns out, you eventually discover why she's having this crisis of faith. And a lot of it goes back to those flashback gameplay segments that are like these old school indie game platforming sections or whatever. Those end up explaining who she is more than like the 3D sections of the game. The flashback sections do. It's, again, this week for whatever reason was the week for me of like, man, I just really need to start playing some new stuff that's different. And so I get this, and then I play Endless Ocean. And I'm like, this week is unlike any week of gameplay. Here's the 2D sections I was talking about. They just pop up out of nowhere. These are all flashbacks to her childhood when she lived with her dad, and her dad had a motorcycle shop where they built these things or whatever. And it all ties in. Like, she meets somebody during this, like, motorcycle race that she does with her dad, and that person ends up being an important person in her life. It trickles on to, again, I don't want to spoil too much. All I can say is if you're even vaguely interested in any of the things that I just said about INDIKA, go buy this game and play it. It is unlike anything you've ever played. And again, I will say, if you are staunchly religious and you don't want to question your beliefs, you're probably not going to enjoy this game because there are some really rough scenes in this. And two, I think it does a really good job of kind of questioning belief. And it might not be something that you want to experience. So I just want to get that out there for people who might be concerned about something like that. But I absolutely fell in love with INDIKA playing this game. I was like, why aren't people like you real? Like, where are you? It's just a fascinating game with a different setting, a different plot. And again, it really mixes things up. Like, as soon as you get tired of like the puzzle platforming, something crazy and off the wall happens that you would never expect or ever guess. And that's just kind of the way it goes all the way to the end of the game. As far as what she has, like, she has a lamp, she has matches, and her medical kit, and that's pretty much it. She uses the matches to light effigies, and they're all over the game. And again, every time you light one, you get some of those points. You get the whole gamified thing that happens with the sound effect. And again, you can't hear it in the B-roll, but like when one of those little things appears, those diamonds appear, it gets like the whole like level up sound effect, or whatever. And it just feels very out of place in this game until you start playing into it further and you start to understand why all that stuff is there. But yeah, the game mechanics are very simple. She can climb, she can walk, she can run. She has the matches. She has a lamp that she can use. It's pretty much always on her hip. You can see it there in the B-roll. And a medical kit. And that's pretty much it. It's a very simple game to play. What else do I have to say? I want to be very careful talking about this game because I don't want to ruin it for everybody. There's some environmental stuff as well where like there's one section of the game where you come to this old rickety abandoned house and there's a safe on the top floor and you shove the safe to certain corners of the roof and it will shift the whole house and open up new platforms for you to like adventure. So there's stuff like that in the game. There's another section where you're on like a lake and there's like a bunch of small icebergs on the lake and you have to walk to one side of the iceberg so that it tips up in the water and then run as fast as you can to get to the other end of the iceberg before it sinks back down so you can get up on a platform. There's all kinds of little environmental stuff like that. So it is like a puzzle platform. You're trying to figure out how to manipulate the environment to get where you need to go. That's the crux of what you're doing for the most part while playing INDIKA. There's also some Nemesis-style sections. I'm not going to let you know what chases you in the game, but there's a section in the game where you're being chased by something, and that actually brings a little bit of a sense of urgency into the game as far as the platforming is concerned, getting away from what's chasing you. What else? Oh, as far as like some other issues, other than it being too dark, like there are some graphical problems. Like, for example, if you actually watch the characters, like when they move, they don't really run. They're like, their legs are moving, but they're really just skating along the environment. Like there's little things like that that kind of bring you out of the experience a little bit and remind you that there wasn't a big budget behind this game. But overall, I think the look is fine. I think it has a pretty distinct look overall. The other thing I would say, too, is that you may have noticed that, like, I always turn off subtitles for B-roll on GameFace, but here they are in this one. You need the subtitles in this, because the voice acting in this, like the soldier, Ilya, he mumbles a lot. And, like, you wouldn't even be able to pick up on a lot of the stuff he says unless the subtitles were there. And then other sections where people are talking over each other, I think they do it on purpose. I think they made the audio mix muddy for a reason. But the side effect of that is you may miss some important dialogue that you may have not, without the subtitles, you may have not got some context that you needed. So, again, I recommend leaving subtitles on for this game. I pretty much never, ever do that, but I think they're needed for this one. And just overall, the tone of the game is very strange. It's like, it's kind of like what it reminded me of, Matt, is it's like if in Bloodborne, where like there's people behind doors and you like knock on the door and they talk, but you never see what they are. I feel like this game is showing you what's behind that door. Like the characters, the way that they talk, they're very, I don't know how to explain it. This whole game is just a mood, I guess is the best way I could put it, that never, ever lets up. Like, it just keeps going. And it just keeps getting better and better, and it goes deeper and deeper. And it's interesting now, watching some of these trailers for this game that made no sense to me at all before, and now they do, in a lot of ways. So, do you have any questions about INDIKA, Matt?
Not really. Some people are asking about the console releases, which I guess it's not out yet.
Yep, it's only available for PC. Eventually, it's coming to PS5 and Xbox Series. And I hear you. Most of you guys are not just strictly PC gamers. So
currently on the PSN store, it just says 5/24.
Oh, really?
There's no release date.
Well, isn't 5/24 the release date?
No, as in like this month.
Oh. Well, yeah.
Yeah, but no day.
5/24, May 24th.
No, May 2024.
Oh, May 24, not May 24th. Gotcha. Yeah, I haven't heard anything about that as far as like
maybe
when
it says, but like on the website it just says May 2024.
So
sometime this month, maybe.
So I got review code from the publisher for this as well, and they obviously only offered the PC version, and all they said was that console versions to follow. They didn't give specific dates. So. I don't know when the console versions are coming out, but it does seem like it's coming pretty soon, like before the end of the month. And it is a little weird. Like it's like if you're only 2 weeks away, like why not just wait? Because this brings up a good point, where I've turned people onto this game, they want to play it, and they can't play it. So, particularly with a game like this, it's kind of like, you need word of mouth for a game like this, I believe, to succeed.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to do the word of mouth thing, and it's not working because they staggered the release with the consoles, which is a little weird. I agree. I will say this, though. Even my raggedy old PC was able to play this. So, overall, like, I think even if you have an old PC with an old graphics card, I think you'll be able to play it still. So if you're worried, you're like, oh, my PC may not be able to pull it off. Mine was able to. So if you're on the fence, maybe there. But overall, I would just say probably wait until it does come out for the other consoles. The other thing, too, is that, like, it's not like we are in November where you're going to have a deluge of these Game of the Year candidates that you have to choose between playing INDIKA or playing Star Wars Outlaws. We're not in that point right now. Like, this is a good point where you have a little bit of downtime before some of the bigger games come out at the end of May to jump in on this and get in on it. All I can say about this game is that, like, it just stuck with me, man. Like, this game is still hanging in my subconscious. It took me a while of thinking about the ending to figure out what the ending meant. I still am not 100% sure that I know what the ending means, but I think that's something that's intrinsic to all good art, is people taking different things away from the art based upon their own life experiences. And that's definitely what happened to me with this game, INDIKA. So, as far as indie games go, this is my indie game of the year. Balatro obviously is right up there, but this, to me, is in that discussion of indie games that we'll be looking at for indie game of the year. And I do think at the end of the year, there will be some publications that will try to say this is game of the year, period. And I think those will be more indie-centric websites. But it's INDIKA. It's only available for PC right now. It's coming to PS5 and Xbox Series. I recommend it wholeheartedly. Again, I've already given you the caveats, some of the things that if you're a certain type of person, it may not jive with you all that much. But I think I've kind of laid down those red flags so you know whether this game will be for you or not.
Well, we'll see. There may not be a whole lot in the remaining schedule that competes with it.
Yeah. Play it, Matt. I think you'll love it. I think it's right in your wheelhouse. I was surprised that you hadn't played it. I should have mentioned it to you once I had gotten into it and been like, dude, go play this.
I didn't know it even came out.
I think that's the problem is this game just flew under the radar. They only put out
my Steam algorithm usually shows me some pretty obscure indie games much of the time. I didn't see anything.
They only put out 3 trailers for this, and the trailers, there's only one that really even shows how the game plays. The rest of them are kind of the trailer that I showed that are just kind of these allegory, religious, stuff that you're like, wait, what does that have to do with this game? But now you know what it is. And again, I highly recommend it, particularly if you're a person who likes narrative-driven games. I think you'll love it. Let's take a quick look at chat and see if anybody has any questions about it before we move on. It's an indie game, so maybe not. El Guapo, the gameplay variety, short length, and narrative reminds me of what remains of Edith Finch. Yeah, Edith Finch was way more of a walking simulator than this, though. There are walk and talks in this, but they don't last all that long. And I'll just say this, they're some of the most pivotal moments in the game. Because that is where they start discussing the headier parts of the game. What they're thinking, what Ilya's thinking, what INDIKA is thinking. They walk and talk together, trying to figure out each other's emotions. And it's a really important part of the game. But it's not, it's really in the minority as far as the runtime is concerned. There's 3 walk and talk sections that are a minute and a half apiece, but they're invaluable as far as figuring out what both of the characters are thinking. See if you guys have anything else. Named after a weed strain for a reason. Actually, INDIKA is not a weed strain. INDIKA is one of 2 types of marijuana. There's INDIKA and sativa. And in, no one even made a mention of this. You guys never mention when I come up with good lines in any of my scripts, but when I included this in Dossier, which is where we recommend games to buy every month, the first line is a joke about going to the weed dispensary. Luke the Gamer says, "It's right up my street." El Guapo, does the gamify sections break any immersion, or are they organic in how they are implemented? So here's the thing. When you first see them, you're like, what the hell? Why did this weird gamified stuff just start appearing? But it's mysterious. You know right away that there's a reason why this is happening. You're you're not going to just put this weird power-up screen in here for no reason. You're not going to put these diamonds in the game that you collect and they explode with an awesome gamified sound effect. Like, you know it's there for a reason, and when it starts happening, it becomes your goal to figure out why it's happening. So that's how I approached it anyway. I have a feeling most people probably will as well. So no, I didn't find the gamified sections to like take me out of the game. It just made me dive in even deeper to try to figure out just what the hell is going on. And let's see if we got anything else here before we move on. No. Oh, lots of positive feedback, which is what I want to see. A lot of you guys saying, hey, this is something that maybe I should check out, and you should. I don't jump on games like this very often. And again, there is a caveat that if you're religious, you may not enjoy it. It may challenge some of your beliefs or whatever, but I think everybody else should definitely give it a go.
Apparently, it was a 14-person team, and 10 of them fled Russia during the development of this.
I didn't know any of this stuff.
In part because they realized that because this game so sharply criticizes the Russian Orthodox Church, and the Russian Orthodox Church is one of the main arms of the propaganda machine in Russia, they realized they were in danger for making this game. So a bunch of them left, and one of the lead guys said, I don't see a reason to ever go back.
Can't fault him there.
Because there is apparently this is in some part and I haven't played it, so I can't tell you exactly how, but apparently a part of it is not just criticism of the Russian Orthodox Church, but a criticism of the Russian Orthodox Church as being used for a propaganda arm to justify the invasion of Ukraine.
I didn't pick up on that.
Well, I imagine it helps to be in Russia and being subjected to all that propaganda. Because
Yeah.
apparently one of the justifications for what they're doing is to go die in Ukraine for the Russian Church to do the will of God, like a crusade kind of thing.
One thing I will say is that Russia didn't have a big impact on the game, other than the fact that it's in the snow and it's cold, and the whole time you're like, damn girl, how are you dealing with that?
From the Polygon article, it sounds like it is very rooted in Russian history and politics and social things that you would probably be more aware of if you
live there. Yeah.
It sounds like they were very intentionally taking aim at the Russian Orthodox Church.
Interesting.
And apparently few of them did not leave Russia because they had family ties or couldn't leave, but the majority of the team is now expatriate.
Well, I mean, they definitely attacked the Russian Orthodox Church. I mean, the whole thing is how horribly she's treated by the people in the convent. I mean, and that makes her
Which
leave.
is doubly funny because that's like a tradition in Russian art. Like, I mean, Russian literature is basically that.
Yeah.
I mean, Dostoevsky made a career out of it.
Yeah.
But I guess you didn't get executed quite so readily then.
I shouldn't laugh about that, but so anyway, the game is
The
called...
Russians would.
Yeah, I know. Sadly,
I mean, that's like half of Russian. The Russian novels are. Yeah, but the Russian novels think they're pretty funny.
right?
Like they're horrifying and there's horrible things that happen constantly. But like Crime and Punishment kind of has a dark sense of humor in there.
This game has moments like that too. So like when you first come across the train wreck, there's a lot of that. Like, first of all, the guy that tries to shoot you is a complete nincompoop. And there's a running joke that goes on for a good, 20 minutes about how you're lucky you ran into that guy because he's basically an idiot and he's a terrible shot. Like, if you'd ran into another one of our soldiers, you would probably be dead. So there is some self-referential stuff as far as, because that's the Russian army, I would guess, were on that train. There were criminals, that angle I could see.
A lot of times those are synonyms, especially back in those days. Yeah.
Well, Ilya might be a metaphor for Ukrainians because he was the criminal on the train with the Russians. He gets out, he shoots them, he becomes your ally.
Or kind of he might be Russia in the sense that he's got the rotting arm, and the smart thing to do would be to remove it, but he won't give it up because he considers it part of his culture.
That might be the Russian people.
Yeah.
The Russian people who, for whatever reason, won't rise up and overthrow Putin, despite what he's doing. The rotting arm of Russia, Vladimir
I'm saying
Putin.
the rotting arm is Ukraine.
Oh, interesting.
And so, he won't give it. Like Ilya is sort of representing that weird, conservative, old mentality Russian who won't let it go, who won't do the smart thing, won't do the best thing for everything, and do what the clear-headed mind demands. And it says no, it's important to my guitar playing. So I have to keep it, it's almost like I'm keeping that cult. You're doing the wrong thing for this weird retroactive reason, and it's if your arm kills you, you also won't be able to play guitar, dumbass.
Yep.
There could be some of that there, but I haven't played it, so I don't.
That's what this game does, though, Matt.
But
it makes you think about things like this in ways that you would not have thought of them before.
But that's also just Russian literature.
Yeah.
It sounds like it's very rooted in that kind of that it's just, there's a magical realist element to it with that guy coming out of the
mouth,
mouth and all that. Like, I recognize a lot of the, having read enough of those in school, that is my degree, is literature, but like I recognize some elements of that and how weird some of that can get, especially if you get into drama. Like, I see a little Uncle Vanya in here as well, like, the cherry tree. There's a lot happening in there. I'm interested.
Okay. There you go. That's INDIKA. Go get it. Again, if you listen to this discussion, the discussion that Matt and I just had, you will have in your head that discussion and hundreds of others as you play this game. If you're into games like that make you think about things in new ways, get INDIKA. All right. And with that, it's time for... What's up, everyone? Shane here. And one thing you may not realize about me is that I am a total sneakerhead. That's right. I've been collecting Nike sneakers since the early 90s. My favorites are Air Max 95 and Air Max 97. Now, one thing that's different about me from your typical sneakerhead is that I actually wear the sneakers. And because of that, they can get dirty. And that is where New York Sneaker Society comes in. Using their advanced shoe cleaning products, I turned an old pair of Nikes that looked like this into this. With their cleaning products, your sneaker life can go from a year to 5 or more. I know that. I have shoes that are like 30 years old that I still wear because I've cleaned them. You can also lower your carbon footprint, by keeping your kicks looking fresh. For my daily drivers, I also appreciate New York Sneaker Society's Refresh Spray to keep them smelling great and staying crisp. Head to nysneakersociety.co/sifted to clean your shoes like a pro at home and get 10% off your order. That's right, that's nysneakersociety.co/sifted for 10% off. That's right, people. It's very important with this sponsor that you use the very specific URL that is given in the ad. Make sure you go to nysneakersociety.co/sifted, SIFTD, because if you use that URL, you get 15% off. And I just want to take a minute to thank those of you who have been supporting New York Sneaker Society through our sponsorship. Again, because you're using that URL, we are being able to track your sales, and your Sneaker Society is able to see what their sponsorship with GameFace is actually doing for them. So again, go to nysneakersociety.co/sifted. Make sure you use that. You get 15% off your sale there. And if you buy one of the bigger kits, that's $40 or whatever. That 15% is a big difference. You also get the 15% on the smaller kits. Like, you can get the essential kit basically for like $15. And if you just want to really clean up your shoes and kind of revive some of the shoes in your closet, that's generally going to give you the stuff that you need. The bigger kit has a lot of the maintaining stuff that you kind of saw, the wipes and things like that. If you just want to clean up your shoes and have them kind of reset so you can start wearing them again, you can buy that $15 kit and get 15% off using that URL, so go and do it. And one of the cool things about this sponsorship is that we encourage you guys to check out brand new games. For example, INDIKA was one of our New York Sneaker Society Sneakers of the Week just a few weeks ago. Here we are talking about it on GameFace, reviewing it, telling you guys how awesome it is. And so I take it to heart to try to find kind of the coolest game that you should be tracking. And when I say that, on Sifted, you can follow games. So what you should have done when I talked about INDIKA was go to Sifted, go to INDIKA's game page, and there's a little gear right next to the title. You click that, drop down shows up, click follow it, and then anytime we publish something new for that game, it will appear in the top of your Sift. So all the games that we cover for the Sneaker of the Week are games that I would recommend that you guys follow as their development moves on. This week's Sneaker of the Week, let me get this all queued up here, is a game from a former all-star development team called The Forever Winter. It is under development by former Mass Effect and Horizon Zero Dawn developers. It is a tactical, third-person survival horror shooter. It's kind of like Gears of War crossed with Killzone. And the reason I say Killzone is because some of the enemies in this have capes. But maybe caped Crusaders in video games, we should now move that over to Helldivers. But some of the enemies that they show in this just reminded me of Killzone. They have like gas masks and like long capes on and things like that. The art style in this is very interesting. Did you see the character right there?
Yeah, I kind of hate that.
You don't like it?
No, not at all.
It's a little bit like Team Fortress, I guess.
I guess it looks very claymation to me.
Yeah.
It's a weird choice for a game that looks like this otherwise.
Uh-huh. Yeah, because it doesn't. The rest of the world doesn't really look like that, right?
No.
It's like it looks realistic, and then you see their faces, and you're like, huh, what? But so we had a teaser trailer for this. There was just an alien with a cow. Like this game looks crazy. We had a teaser trailer for this. It didn't really show anything. This is the first gameplay trailer where they actually show in-engine stuff. This is coming to, no surprise, PC, PS5, and Xbox Series. They don't have a release date for it yet, but it does seem like it's a multiplayer, like, competitive game. I don't think it's going to have a single-player component to it, so maybe it won't take quite as long to be finished. But you can see it has a lot of your typical games-as-a-service stuff as far as your loadouts are concerned. But this game has really caught my eye. It's a unique take on survival horror. I hope it doesn't just end up becoming another vapid game-as-a-service. Matt, it does feel a little bit like all these all-star studios full of people who left these teams that worked on great games and they get together to make their own game. It feels like every single time they make a game as a service.
Yeah, well, it seems like a waste to use this setting on a game as a service that's never going to do anything.
Yeah.
Because most of them don't.
Yeah, it's true, sadly.
For every Helldivers, there's 50 that just
no, you're right.
come and go.
Yeah. Even ones that have had decent campaigns just haven't managed to catch on in a lot of cases. It's been interesting to watch, but maybe this is the one. I'm kind of surprised that Capcom hasn't announced like a Resident Evil style game like this.
I mean, maybe they know better.
Maybe they're the top publisher in the industry right now for a reason.
Yeah.
They are on quite a roll. But anyway, again, this game is called The Forever Winter. It is coming to PC, PS5, and Xbox Series. No real release date yet. It seems like they were hinting at like next year at some point. Again, under development by former Mass Effect and Horizon Zero Dawn developers, so you know the pedigree is there.
Except not, because neither of those are competitive game-as-a-service shooters.
No,
so.
right. But, I mean, as far as making quality games, the craftsmanship pedigree is
but
there.
like the craftsmanship of those two games, does that translate to these?
Well, it means it'll probably look good. It means it'll probably play pretty well. It means it'll probably be, well, relatively glitch-free.
I don't know.
Yeah, that one's a little dicey. The QA
Will they have
department's...
any reason for me to keep playing it?
Right.
If there's no story, if the strengths of them as story and character and setting, and it's just going to be like, oh, fill that bar up again. Like,
yeah.
Game as a service, basically, like, already I'm checked out. Mm-hmm. As soon as you say that, like, I already care less.
I think a lot of people are that way. I don't think you're alone in that. Yeah, I think a lot of people feel that way.
I mean, I root Helldivers 2 on because I think Arrowhead's doing everything right and they have a unique take on things. But I haven't played that game
I played it
twice since
it
came out.
GameFace, and I haven't played it
since.
It's
just a giant grind. Like, it's like there's no... I mean,
Yeah.
okay, I could get it. And, like, I'd play a single-player game in that universe.
Yeah.
But, like, just playing the same bug fight over and over again isn't interesting to me.
Yep, I felt the same way. I haven't played it since we played it for GameFace. So, anyway, there you go. It's the Forever Winter. To Matt's point, though, that's why you follow the game. So you can figure out if it is a crappy game as a service. Maybe it does end up being. Maybe they decide to shift gears and pivot, and it ends up being a single-player game. That's why you got to follow the game, so you get all the updates in your Sift on Sifted.net. And with that, it's time to get to our final game of GameFace 386. It is a little Souls-like called Another Crab's Treasure. Matt, I'm surprised you didn't give this a go because this is on Game Pass. It is
I'm over the Souls-like thing.
So am I, Matt. Let me tell you, I started playing this and I was like, why am I playing this game? So it is
a Shoals-like.
It's it's a little unique in that it is a 3D platformer with Dark Souls-like combat. And you play as a hermit crab called Krill. Get it? Ha. And basically, as the game starts, this, I guess it's a loan shark or a land shark, shows up and takes your shell away because you owe taxes to the monarch. And as it turns out, this evil king has moved into the area and he's decided to just start taxing everybody. And as part of your tax, they take your shell. And they're like, until you can come up with the other some other form of payment, we're going to keep your shell. And so they take your shell and they run away with your shell. And then the entire objective of the game is to basically get your shell back. And so you play as the little hermit crab out in this wide open ocean. And it is like an open world game for the most part. Like, there are zones, and the game does struggle to load the zones. Like, a lot of times when you cross that line, you'll get like a little bit of a loading hitch.
He's a loan shark, like Flappy Jaw toy.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. And he's
so you're a victim of late-stage crabitalism, is what you're saying.
Oh, I like that. The crabitalism. And that's what this game is, Matt. It is you look at it and you think, okay, this is a game for kids. You may have learned that it's a Souls-like, but you're probably assuming, like, this is like...
The game for kids you hate.
You're like, okay, this is probably like my first Souls-like. This is like, you want your kid to eventually play Dark Souls or Elden Ring one day. This is a game you give them to, like, figure out if they like it or not. It is not. This game is every bit as difficult. In fact, I would argue more difficult than Elden Ring. There's... The other thing, too, it's not for kids. There's swearing in this game. There are jokes in this that go way beyond innuendo. Like, I would, once they're 8 or 9, they can probably handle this game. I would not let a little kid play this game. Not because it's hard, which it is, but because of some of the content and some of the jokes. And the whole gag in this, Matt, is capitalism. That's the whole thing, with a little twist of eco. So what's happened, basically, they take your shell away, and you set out on a quest to get your shell back. But what you find out when you jump into the ocean is that the ocean is horribly polluted. And the pollution is causing all the other sea creatures to go crazy, basically. And I will say this about this game. It provides an interesting perspective on this, because I've never thought about, if you're a sea animal, what do you think about this? Well, they don't know what this stuff is. They don't know that all this junk that's in the game that humans have thrown into the ocean and it's sunk down to the bottom of the ocean, they don't know what it is. They're just like, these weird objects just come down from above and they land here, and some of them poison us and make us sick. It's very interesting to see pollution from the perspective of the sea animals, who are just freaking clueless. Like, they don't even know what humans are. Just like, these things are coming down here, and like, some of them are bad and they make us nauseous or they make us sick. And so there is an eco angle to this, but overall it's like a parody of capitalism, basically. So you start out, you don't have your shell, you don't have anything, and it's all about picking up trash and using it to your advantage. So another crab's treasure is a play on one man's trash is another man's treasure. Well, this is another crab's treasure, because this game is all about using the trash in the ocean to your advantage. So you can see he has a plastic fork. That's the first weapon you get in the game, is a plastic fork. And eventually, all the other weapons that you get in the game are trash as well, stuff that you just find on the seafloor. Now, it is a little weird in that the game gatekeeps what you can pick up and what you can't use as weapons. So weapons are things like plastic forks, knives, stuff like that. Eventually, he gets a temporary shell on the journey to get his permanent shell back. And basically, any object in the game, he can just crawl his butt up into and use as a shell. So the first one that you get is a soda can. And he just crawls up into it, and then he has the soda can as his shell. And, like, when you go to block in this game, he completely turtles inside whatever his shell is. So if you're in the soda can, if you go to block, it just appears as a soda can sitting by itself, and the enemy attacks the soda can. And eventually you get, like, thimbles, and you get tennis balls. And the coolest thing about this game is it's all driven by the shells. Each shell has its own defensive rating, but it also has its own special attack. There are like 69 different shell... What'd you say?
Well, it just showed it.
Oh, it did. So there are like 69 different shells in the game, and each one of them has its own special attack and its own level of defensive capabilities. The other thing, too, is that the shells will deteriorate and break mid-battle, mind you. So you're in the middle, even in boss fights, like your shell will break, the can will break or whatever, and then it's a mad scramble to go get another shell, because you're so vulnerable as a hermit crab without your shell at all. Like, you basically are just going to die. You're basically going to die anyway, even with the shell. This game, 2 hits, you're basically dead. You take 2 hits in this game, you have a pixel of health left. If you get hit again, you die. And so you're constantly trying to use the health. You tap up on the D-pad to use the health in this game. There seems to be like a delay when you use health. I can't tell you how many times, Matt, I died in this game without ever being able to use health, because you die so fast, you can't even use it before you die. It's crazy that a game that looks like this is so damn hard. I really thought it was going to be like kids' first Souls-like or whatever. Nothing could be further from the truth. It is definitely not that at all. As you can tell, the game has a Pikmin vibe to it, like small creature, big human objects thing. And again, it uses it as a gameplay mechanic, which is pretty creative and pretty interesting. Like, I wanted to play this game more than I did, because after a while, it just became so hard. And I'm like, this is just another Dark Souls game. Like, you can walk through most of the rank and file enemies in this game, they'll kill you every once in a while, but then you get to a boss fight, and like, so for example, I was recording B-roll of this. I made it all the way to the first boss fight, and then I had to fight the boss like 20 times. I just hit stop on record, because it's like I'm not recording 80 different attempts at fighting the first boss. And so I got to the point where I was like, this isn't all that different from any other Dark Souls games I'm playing. There's also a little bit of an element of Bloodborne in this. Like, eventually you get to a point where you get a power-up that lets you take health back while dishing out the health. There's a little bit of Sekiro in here, but I would argue it's harder than all of them. It's so bizarre. Like, I could never really get the parry window down. I could never time it right. The other thing, too, is that the enemies in this, they're really fast. They can run faster than you, so you can't run away from them. And their attacks stretch a crazy distance. Like, you don't think they can hit you, and next thing you know, they stride, like, 3 feet and manage to land an attack still. I never managed to get, like, the timing down for the attacks in this. Like, when I managed to dodge something, it just felt like it was all luck. I never got it down. The blocking in this, because he has to, when you block, he goes inside his shell. The delay from attacking to going to blocking, it's not like other Souls-likes. You have to really anticipate being attacked to time the block right in this. I hardly ever got it right. I almost always got hit before he would get fully into his shell. There's separate character upgrade skill trees, and they give you like buffs to your weapons. But the crazy part is like, to change your skills in this game, it's a vendor, and it's like one vendor. So anytime you're like, okay, I want to go and mess with the skill tree and get some new skills or tweak my skills, you have to fast travel to this very specific location to get to the vendor, and then fast travel back through a couple points to get back to where you were. It's just poor design, really. One thing I will say, there's no stamina meter, which I appreciate very much, which is the bane of my existence generally in these games, but it doesn't even matter. Like, it just doesn't matter. This is a 3D platformer, and you don't really get a lot of platforming mechanics. You basically get a really floaty double jump, and then eventually you get like a hook shot, which it's basically fishing line with a hook on it. But you can use it to attack enemies. You can hook an enemy and then pull them into you. You can also use it for platforming. So if you jump, you do your double jump, you're not going to quite make it, you can throw your hook out, hook it, and it will zing you into the platform or whatever. And then the platforming in this, again, is very floaty. It should be, because most of it takes place underwater. It makes sense. But you just never feel like you're totally in control in this game. And then the camera is bad. Like, enemies, as you just saw right there, they just pop up out of the sand. And there's no warning. There's not like bubbles coming up to let you know they're there or any kind of a warning sign or anything. They just appear. And so you engage with one enemy. Next thing you know, from off camera, here comes like 2 other ones attacking you from behind. Like, it is just brutally difficult. Like, I can't believe how hard this game is. Like,
Vincent says there's accessibility settings that make it very easy.
No, they did nothing. So in the options, you can go in. You can change the window for like parries and blocks and things like that. I went in and flipped those switches. I couldn't tell any difference at all. I was no better at the parry. I still couldn't block before I got attacked. I could not see any difference. So I don't know if maybe it worked better for you. To me, it did nothing. I went, believe me, after that first boss fight, I went looking for the accessibility option. So I was like, I'm not playing it like this, man. F this game. And I went and flipped the switches, and I couldn't tell any difference in the game at all.
You can literally give him a gun and kill everything in one hit.
Oh, I didn't see that. I flipped I didn't want to make it like that. Like, I wanted to make it like, so there's still some challenge. So there's 2 switches to like make the windows bigger for the parry and the block. And I flipped both of those on. I couldn't tell any difference. Obviously, a gun where you can one-hit everything, it's going to make the game pointless. Unless you just, I guess those are for people who just want to see the plot. I don't know. But this isn't a plot-heavy game. It's like you get the opening segments where it's like, hey, you need to go get your shell back, and then it's just a bunch of talking head segments back and forth. Like, honestly, this game is made like an N64 3D platformer. And I just want to say right now, that's not good enough anymore. Playtonic did the same damn thing with Yooka-Laylee. It's like, hey, we're the old Rare guys. We can make a platformer that we made back in 1998, and that's good enough in 2016. It's not. It wasn't good enough when Yooka-Laylee came out. It's not good enough now. Like, I get this is like a smaller indie game, but they just basically, I just feel like people who make 3D platformers are like, that's all you gotta do. Just put the talking heads in there and make them talk all goofy, and that's good enough. It's not good enough. I played those N64 platformers in 1998. They were good enough back then. They're not good enough now. So if you're counting on the plot to carry you through this game, that's not going to happen. Again, there is some funny gags in this. Like, I actually chuckled a few times at some of the gags in this and some of the comments about capitalism and things like that. They don't beat you over the head with it. They do it enough so you understand the theme of it, at least. And there are some legitimately funny gags. Like I said, they really made me chuckle at a couple of different points in the game, which most games don't do that are supposed to be funny. This one actually does nail it a couple times. I did find myself laughing or at least chuckling at a couple of the moments. But overall, like, the platforming is like really loosey-goosey. And eventually they do get to a point where it starts to get challenging. Like, the first 3 hours of this game, like, the platforming is like, hey, here's this gigantic platform, you can't miss it. Eventually it does start to get to where they try to make you flex your skills, and the controls and the camera just aren't there. Like, there's moments where, like, you get caught on stuff, like the hitboxes aren't 1,000% great on stuff, and, like, sometimes Krill will get caught on things. Like, the further I got into this game, the less I liked it, I guess is what I'm getting at. Now, keep in mind, I'm not a big Souls player. You guys know that about me already. I fight a boss like 10 times without getting much better at fighting that boss. I'm out. And this game is like that. Like, you can make your way to the boss, and you get to the boss, it's a choke point. And eventually you have to basically play perfectly to beat the boss, and then you move on.
Or you shoot him with the gun.
Or if you can cheat. Shoot him with the gun. But it's like, why even play this game? Like, just go watch it on YouTube or whatever. Like, what's the point then?
You gotta get something out of your Game Pass subscription.
Yeah, I guess you're right. This is on Game Pass. I would probably pay... I mean, I'll say this. If you're a Souls fan and you're looking for something different, because this is different.
Well, glass doesn't do that underwater.
I know. It doesn't float away.
No. It's not how that works.
No. I mean, and the frame rate in this just bottoms out sometimes for no reason. Like, this game should not be bottoming out at any point, but it does. So the frame rate gets a little janky at times. What else can I say? If you die, it is like Dark Souls. You go back to the last save point you were at, and you lose all your stuff. You have to go back to where you died and collect the orb. All the enemies respawn, so it gets dicey sometimes. Like, if you die at a really bad spot, you have to go back and, like, kind of finagle your way through the enemies. The enemies in this are on you. Like, you get within, like, 20 virtual feet of them, and they're on you. They will not give up. They will not stop running after you. It's kind of crazy. They're, like, obsessed with you once you get into their purview. So even if you try or you want to avoid combat in this game, it's almost impossible, in all honesty, to avoid confrontations.
I mean, at least it has the difficulty settings.
Yeah, it does have accessibility stuff, which is it feels like that's something that's going to start changing in this subgenre. It feels like across the board. We'll see. But it seems like most of the new Souls-likes are having difficulty settings, accessibility options. But again, like the things that I changed, I literally could not see any difference. It was just as hard as it was before I changed those settings. Obviously, giving somebody a one-hit gun to kill everything will be different from what I went through, but I don't understand why you even play it at that point. So the audio in this game is also low rent and bad. It has like no impact. There's very little voice acting. Some of the music is a little catchy. Like, I found myself humming a couple of the tunes, but otherwise the sound effects and everything don't have any punch. Like, it's the antithesis of Tales of Kenzera, where the audio in that game really magnified the action. It does nothing for this game. So I guess what I would say first and most important about this game is that it is not for kids. Don't go and buy this or even go download it on Game Pass because you think your kid might like it. Unless your kid likes really, really challenging things, they might like it then.
I mean, kids play hard stuff.
They do, yeah.
We did.
But it's not like my first Dark Souls, like people looking at it may think. Like, at least that's what I thought it was before I ever played it. I was like, oh, this is like Dark Souls for kids. It's not. This is tuned for adults, without a doubt. Also, the subject matter is definitely for adults as well. There you can see my makeshift soda can shell there. And again, each shell has its own special attack. Like, the can gives you like this bubble gun that you can use to shoot enemies with. Some will give you like spinning, like pile drivers. And again, there's 70 of them. Mm-hmm. And that is really the coolest part of the game. And I really hope that like maybe they make a sequel that isn't so evil, that still has that mechanic, or, I hate to say it, somebody else steals it. They just start using the idea, because it really is a really cool idea. The way that's more important than anything. Like, there are separate skill tree that you can use to give buffs to Krill, but the shells, the junk that you use as the shells, that's really the big deal in this game. That's really the showstopper. It's the thing that people should kind of remember this game for eventually, when it's water under the bridge, no pun intended. So that's it.
That's it.
That's all I have to say about another crab's treasure.
That's all I have to say.
Do you have any questions about it, Matt?
Nope.
Let's go.
Looks pretty straightforward.
Yeah, it is. Again, there's some clever writing in it. There's some funny moments. It's lighthearted. It does have brevity, which makes it different than other Souls-likes. It's not like this deathly serious. But I'll say this too. Like, one of the things that drives me crazy about Souls-likes is I love like the setting and the art and the enemies, and I just can't get past the fact that it's just crazy hard. This, it doesn't have that. It doesn't have like the setting and the enemies and the art that I really like. It's just this really low-rent, cheesy, corny, under-the-sea thing. So I didn't have a ton of fun with this. It is a Souls-like. You might expect that because I am not a fan of that subgenre. But I thought it might be a Souls-like for people like me. It is not. It is a straight-up Souls-like that borrows elements from pretty much every one of From Software's games. There's even some inside jokes in the game that make reference to some things in Dark Souls and Elden Ring. So they know what they're doing here. It is a little bit of a parody of the Souls-like, along with a parody of capitalism and all that stuff as well. So there you go. That's another Crab's Treasure. It's available for pretty much everything. I think it's only PS4. I think it was not released for. It's even available for Switch. And as I said earlier, it is on Game Pass. So if you are a subscriber, you can just go download it and give it a whirl if you want to. But I do not recommend it. I did not enjoy much of my time with it, although it does have some pretty cool and some pretty unique concepts ultimately. Well, let's take a look at chat real quick just to make sure you have no questions about this one before we move on. JM Rain, thank you for Twitch Prime. That's awesome. Noxator Knight, it sounds like life isn't better under the sea. Definitely not. Are there any tin drums in the soundtrack? Yes, there are. And there might be a xylophone or two as well. You never would have guessed that, though, huh? Let's see. What Vincent says put on some accessibility features. Mr. Crab origin story. Don't think you guys have any questions about it. Cody S. Carter, thank you for Twitch Prime. I think I saw another one up here somewhere that I missed. Rigor Mortis UK, thank you for Twitch Prime as well. Yep. So anyway, the search goes on for me to find a Souls-like that I'll really enjoy, Matt. I just feel like it's just never going to happen, unfortunately. But, you know, everything doesn't have to be for everybody, is what I've learned as I've gotten older. It's okay to have things that you don't like and other things that people do like that you don't like. That's just the way life goes. And with that, it is time for... That's right, it's time for Name That Game Tune, where I play 5 audio samples from a video game and you try to guess the name of the game before Matt. Couple things before we get going. If you've won already this year, do not play. You can only win once every calendar year. The chat goes into slow mode, so don't spam the chat with game titles. You'll lose. And then the final thing is we give away codes for PC games if you win. That's right, you can win a game if you win Name That Game Tune. And if you don't play PC games, please don't play, because that's what we give out for the award for the winners. If you have a friend who might play PC games, that's okay, as long as the code is going to be used and it's not just going to sit there. We want to make sure that the codes that we give out are given out to people. And all these codes are supplied by soundwizardry.com. They are literally, they're perfectly named. They are the wizards of sound. Whether you're talking about in-game audio, and they worked on 2 Game of the Year candidates last year. Their resume is impeccable, but they do so much more than that. They can work on your podcast audio to fix it if you have like crazy scratching or noises through it. They can do magic with audio. Go to soundwizardry.com. They also just lost one of their huge contracts recently. They have an opening right now. They are ready for a big project. So if you are a publisher or a developer and you are watching this show, and I know there are a lot of you guys that do that, hit up soundwizardry.com. They have an opening right now. You will not regret it. And I think most importantly, at least for me, I've said this before, they are just awesome people. They are the type of people that I want to work with every chance I get. So go to soundwizardry.com and get the ultimate in sound. And with that, I think we're ready for Name That Game. Get your headphones, Matt. I'll get the volume turned up for you. I got to scroll to the end of chat here.
Ow.
That was crazy. Let me get to the end of chat here so we can bring you guys up. Here we go. Name That Game. Let me get to the samples.
Up a little bit more.
You need more volume? Okay. Turn it up a little more. And that's where it is every week. Is it good now?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, here we go. We're ready for the first voice sample for Name That Game for episode 386. And here it is in 3, 2, 1.
I don't think you're scrolled all the way down.
Yep. I am. Uncharted, no. Any more guesses on that first one? I'm always surprised at how many people guess at the first one. They must, unless they really know it. Witcher 2, no. Dark Souls, no. Any guesses, Matt?
No.
Gears of War, no. Looks like maybe we'll make it past the first one again for 2 weeks in a row. Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order, no. Draylox asked, does Jedi Fallen Order Survivor count as a Souls-like? On the fringe.
No, it's not a Souls-like, but it takes... Obviously, it has elements.
Yeah.
I don't think you can... I think you need to do more than just you steal the bonfire idea to be a Souls-like.
Yep, agreed. Ammo Clip 20, thank you for subscribing at Tier 1, man. That's awesome. Or girl. Tekken 8, no. That's from Evil Only 5. Okay, not many guesses coming in for that one. All right, here we go. Let's move to the second one. And here it is in 3, 2, 1. SpongeBob, Battle for Bikini Bottom, no, but that is a great guess. Sleepy Turtle 3.
Grabbed by the ghoulies?
Not Grabbed by the Ghoulies, although I would be impressed with myself if I had chosen Grabbed by the Ghoulies. SRPG, thank you for Twitch Prime, man. Bloodborne, no. Resident Evil 2 Remake, no. Sekiro, no. Resident Evil 4, no. Condemned, no. Draylox pulling out the Condemned. Criminal Origins. Nice one. J-Force Breaker, zero idea. I bet that's some JRPG. Ghost of Tsushima, no.
We did that already.
Yeah. Yep. I think we're going to make it to the third one. Ninja Blade, no.
Ninja Blade, yeah.
All right. I did say last week, after you guys got on the second one, that my goal this week was for you guys to not ever get it. But I did relent on that a little bit. I think you guys will get it maybe on the fourth or fifth one. We'll see. You guys prove me wrong all the time. You'll probably get it on the next one. Okay, that looks like all the guesses. Here we go. We're going to the third one. Here's the third sample in 3. Hybrid Heaven, no. Fire Native. Here's the third sample in 3, 2, 1. Shane understood the assignment. Dead Rising 1, no. Elaine, I'm not sure what that is. No. Hellblade, no. Shadow of the Dam, no. Resident Evil Village, no. The Medium, no. Conker's Bad Fur Day, no. Although that one day, maybe. Rage, no. Until Dawn, no. Beyond Good and Evil, no. Ark, no. Dying Light, no. That one really got people thinking. Resident Evil 3, no. Any more? Going once. Going twice. All right, we're going to the 4 sample. And here it comes. In 3, 2, 1.
Ah! Ah! Ah!
Control, no. The Evil Within, no. Shane's so proud of himself. Yes. Amnesia, no. Street Fighter 5, no. Dragon Slayer, no. Michael Jackson, no. Dead by Daylight, no. Oh my gosh, we're going to make it to the 5th one, Matt. Borderlands 3, no. Oh, snap. Is that it? Luigi's Mansion 3, no. Dragon's Dogma 2, no. Days Gone, no. Although, I almost did Days Gone today. I was right on the fringe. That was like the second runner-up for today. All right. Any more guesses? Going once? Going twice? All right, here we go. We're going to the final one. I'm giving myself a round of applause for that. Okay, here we go. Here's the fifth one. And final one. In 3, 2, 1. Will anyone
Dragon's Lair.
No. Dragon's Lair. That's a good guess, though. Nope. That's a good one for this, actually. Dragon's Lair. That's a really good one. We would get it right away. I know every sound in Dragon's Lair. Soman, no. The Order 1886, no. The Sims, no. Fable 2, no. Twisted Metal Black, no. Interesting. Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, no. Redfall, no. Dead Island 2, no. And we have a winner! Dark Force 256 got it. It Takes Two. Great job, man. Great, great job. There it is. Dark Force 256. Got it. It is It Takes Two. And for once, I don't have to go back and listen to all the old samples that I never played. Great job, Dark Force 256. Awesome job, man. As you probably know, you can get at me right here on Twitch if you want to by sending me a DM. You can send me a DM on Twitter. I'm at Dinfire. You can send Sifted a DM on Twitter, at Sifted Games. You can send me a DM on Sifted where I'm at Shane. Any of those ways to get at me, send me a message and I'll get you your code. Before we get going, I just want to remind you guys that we are supported 100% by patreon.com, at patreon.com/sifted. That's SIFTD. You can pledge whatever you want there. You can give us $1 just because. $2 gets you Pachter Factor a week early. $4 gets you all our content at least 3 days early. That is the best way that you can support us. But if you don't have any money and you're an Amazon Prime subscriber, you can help us out with Twitch Prime. If you're watching on YouTube, go down below into the description. And by the way, our Twitch Prime has like flatlined again. This happens every 4 months. It's like it flatlines. We get like nothing for like a month, and then I bring it up, and then you guys do it again. So we're back at not getting anything. I need you guys to all go do it again. Please help us out with Twitch Prime. It is free. And if you've already connected your account, it takes 3 seconds to give us $2. That's it. 3 seconds. Please spend the 3 seconds and help us out. We'd really appreciate it. We rely on that money from Twitch Prime to keep going. It's not like extra bonus cash or anything like that. We need it. So if you can do that, that's a great help as well. And if you have no money, you don't have Amazon Prime, just review the show. Review the show, like the show, ring the dumb bell on YouTube, do all the dumb YouTube crap. All that stuff actually matters. It makes a difference. Reviewing the show on podcast services makes a huge difference. When somebody searches video games, it makes us pop up in the results in the search. So even if you don't have money, there's a million ways to help us if you want to, and I hope that you want to. If you're watching this show, I think you like it. You're not going to watch a 3-hour podcast about games unless you like the podcast. So I'm assuming you like it. I'm assuming you've been watching for a while. Help us out, man. Like, we can't do this for free. It costs money to do all this stuff. This isn't a charity, sadly. I wish I were rich and I could just do this for fun. That would be the dream, honestly. To never have to bring this crap up again would be a dream, Matt. To never have to talk about Twitch Prime again or asking people to go to our Patreon. It sucks having to do this stuff. I'm sure you guys understand it. I don't want to do it, but we've got to do it. That's the only way we stay alive. That's the only way GameFace keeps going. So thanks to all our guys who show up on chat and girls. You guys are awesome. You guys make the show better. You fact check us. You add things. Vincent is a god in our chat, helping us out with little factoids and things like that. Appreciate all you guys who show up for our live stuff, period. All of it makes a difference. Thanks to everybody who's subscribing with real money to our Twitch channel. All that stuff is awesome. We appreciate all of it. We'll be back next Tuesday. We will definitely be reviewing Hades 2, among a bunch of other stuff. And look forward to that. Towards the end of May, show's really going to start heating up. The last couple weeks of May have some bangers, man. So we got some big shows coming up here, but I hope you enjoyed today's show as well. I'll say this. I worked harder on today's show than I've worked on an episode in a long time, for whatever reason. It just took a lot of work to get this show together, so I hope you guys enjoyed it. So we'll see you next Tuesday right here at twitch.tv/SiftedGames. Until then, have yourselves a great week filled with great games and filled with awesome cats like Luna.